Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Horsham Planning Committee. I am Councillor Ellis Brown and I will be chairing this committee meeting this evening. I shall be supported by the Vice Chair, Councillor Peter van der Boer, and the professional officers. Thank you for attending, and may I remind members of the public that it is not a public forum for you to ask questions or challenge the points raised during the debate by officers or members of the committee. You must not engage with the members or call out during the meeting. If you have requested to speak, when invited to do so, it's important that you keep to your allotted time. This will be monitored this evening as we have a rather packed agenda, and I shall prompt you to conclude your comment as we approach the end of your allotted time. Your comments and discussion points must be relevant to the application the committee is considering. We're not expecting a fire drill this evening, so should you hear the alarm, please make your way to the nearest fire exit, which is the rear of the chamber. And we shall meet outside the Lind Cross Public House. May I also ask council members and members of the public to please switch off mobile phones or other electronic devices to silent, and remember to turn your microphones on before speaking and turn them off when you have finished. When members are voting, please ensure that your hands are clearly raised so that we can actually capture the vote. I also remind members on the committee you cannot vote on applications within your ward. I remind everyone here this evening to show respect to each other throughout the meeting, especially as this is being live streamed. Please refrain from any personal comments relating to officers and members of the committee. Before we proceed, could the officers here this evening please introduce themselves, starting with the officers on my right. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Pettifer, Senior Planning Officer.
Sam Whitehouse, Planning Officer.
Jason Hawkes, Principal Planning Officer.
Good evening, Emma Parks, Head of Development.
Claire Brown, Principal Planning Solicitor.
Melissa Stallard, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 1, apologies for absence and notification of any substitute members. Do we have any apologies for absence, and are there any substitutes here this evening?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Anthony Frankland. Councillor Warwick Hellawell will be substituting for him, and we have apologies from Councillor Clive Trott.
Thank you very much. Minutes of the meetings held on the 3rd and the 17th of February, do you all agree I can sign as a true and accurate reflection of the meeting? Agreed. Agreed. Okay, thank you very much. Declarations of members' interest. There's no need to record that you're unable to vote, as this will be monitored by the officer. But are there any declarations of interest from the members of the committee? No? Jolly good. Item number 4, announcements from the Chair. Our Chief Exec, none from the Chief Exec. But just to draw your attention, there is an addendum to the committee report for applications DC 250629. And so members are aware, in view of the packed agenda, I'm only allowing members to speak once during each debate. Following conclusion of the public speaking, before inviting the officers to respond, I'll ask any member would they like clarification on any matter raised by the public. There will be a break this evening, quite possibly after item number 6. So moving forward to item number 5, which is DC 250629, former Novartis site, Parsonage Road, Horsham. Please could the officer present the application to committee?
Thank you. So as Len stated, there is an addendum for this item. This addendum outlines an additional bird box, brick and box condition. Amendments are also proposed to the wording of 2 conditions. Further to the addendum, there's also an additional formative recommended for the landscaping condition to include wildflower planting, and a further condition is also recommended requiring details of the proposed substation fronting Parsonage Road to be submitted for approval. We're also proposing a minor amendment to condition 11 relating submission of a drainage strategy. The amendment would allow demolition to take place prior to submission of a drainage scheme. So here we see the site highlighted in red. The application relates to the west side of the Novartis site. This is known as phases 1 and 2, shown here in red. This site is to be developed by the Level Partnership. Phase 3 is to the eastern side, shown here in blue, and a separate application has been approved for development of this phase for 244 dwellings. The current application for phases 1 and 2 is for 204 dwellings and a commercial unit. Altogether, the whole site, including all phases, would result in 449 dwellings across the whole of the Novartis site. You can see an aerial view of phases 1 and 2 and shows the existing buildings on site. And you can see the existing cedar trees leading up to the existing buildings. There's a railway line to the south. Linden Homes development is directly to the north, and Richmond Road Conservation Area to the south over the railway lines. This slide shows the previous outline consent for the whole of the site. This was approved in 2020 under DC 182687. This proposal split the site into two, with up to 300 residential units approved to the west side of the site, shown here in yellow, and 25,000 square metres of commercial floor space approved to the eastern side, shown in turquoise. Sorry. The current application relates to the area shown here for the approved 300 dwellings to the west of the site, shown in yellow. It should be noted that the outline consent was never implemented, and this permission has now lapsed. It is still, however, a material consideration to termination of the current application. Here we have some photographs of the central buildings on site. Building 3 is the main building facing west with a clock tower shown here. The building is locally listed for its Art Deco appearance. As outlined in the report, the proposal is to retain the central clock tower and to replace the wings of this building. The wings are to be replaced due to significant structural problems, which means they are not able to be retained and converted into flats as originally proposed. This shows the cedar trees on site. There are 7 trees covered by a tree preservation order. The proposal is to replace the trees with a row of dawn redwoods. The applicant has not been able to retain the trees as part of the current development for various reasons. Firstly, it's accepted that 2 of the trees would need to be removed due to their condition regardless of this application. So this would leave 5 trees. Secondly, these trees are known to pose a risk whereby branches detach from the tree and can potentially injure people or damage cars. This would mean they would be difficult to manage over time and eventually result in their removal. The proposal is to replace all the trees now with a coordinated replacement planting. This would result in an avenue of trees of consistent scale and symmetry and create a far stronger visual improvement. Turning to the current proposal, this shows the proposed layout for the 205 dwellings. The proposal is a mix of blocks of flats and a variety of dwelling houses. The proposal utilises the existing vehicular access from Wimblehurst Road, as shown here, and includes 4 mews houses fronting onto Parsonage Road. The plan shows the part retained central building 3 with replacement blocks of flats directly to the east with a central courtyard. Then you have 2 new 5-storey blocks to north and south and dwellings to the rest of the site. This plan shows a proposed ground floor of the site. You can see clearly here the retained central boulevard leading up to the central buildings. You can see here as well the trees on site shown within the dark circles which are to be retained. This plan shows the ground floor dwelling mix with a high number of small 1 and 2 bedroom flats proposed and mostly 3 or 4 bedroom houses. The proposal includes 35% affordable housing, which relates to 70 units split between 70% affordable rented units and 30% shared ownership units. I've highlighted here the proposed commercial unit within building 3. This is proposed as a commercial or community use and can be used as a communal space, a shared working space, for example, a cafe or a retail use. Here I've shown the variety of houses proposed. The houses are between 2 and 3 stories and all have pitched roofs with a vertical emphasis. The dwellings to the bottom left to right here, are mews houses and would front Parsonage Road. The mews houses will not benefit from their own gardens but would have first floor roof terrace for the amenity of the residents. Turning to design of the block of flats, this shows a proposed elevation of the 3 blocks facing west, including building 3. The buildings are all 5 stories high with an inset top floor. This shows the replacement wings for building 3, which are very similar to the superseded proposals to convert the building. You can see the retained clock tower retained as the main feature of the building, which would be the prominent feature within the site. The design of the new blocks is reflective and sympathetic design of the main central building, as you can see here. So this shows the proposal for building 3 in more detail. You can clearly see the retained clock tower with its vertical emphasis, with the rebuilt wings which have more of a horizontal focus, which is very similar to the current appearance of the building and the previous scheme for the conversion of the building. So here we see the proposed landscaping for the site. In addition to the replacement dawn redwoods to the boulevard, you have landscaping proposed throughout, including an area of landscaping in front of building 3. This is the proposed ground floor for all the flats. You can see the central courtyard area here, which is designed in an Art Deco style. Cycle and refuse storage areas of flats are shown here. I've indicated here a ventilated undercroft to the block of flats fronting Parsonage Road. This amendment was required in order to protect the root protection area of a significant street tree and resulted in the loss of a ground floor flat. So now I have some artist impressions. You can see here the vision for this part of the Novartis site, the tree-lined boulevard leading up from pitched houses to the taller central buildings with a central clock tower. For parking, the scheme includes 250 parking spaces, which is in line with County Highways parking standards, and this includes basement parking below the central buildings. Predominant material would be brick for the majority of houses, which is not quite reflected here, which would match the red brick prevalent in the houses within the Richmond Conservation Area. The larger blocks of flats are shown with a grey buff brick, which is designed to reflect the materials of the Art Deco building. Buff brick is also proposed to the Mews houses fronting Parsonage Road. So it's an artist's impression of the view you see from Wimbledon Road entering the site. And this shows the blocks of flats in detail. You can see the buff brick here with the aluminium balconies and the aluminium top floor. So this shows the front of the building 3 with the proposed landscaped area. So finally, this slide shows phase 3 in the context of all the site, including phases 1 and 2. You can see the central buildings remain as a central main focus of pro sites, with boulevards either side. In terms of the principal development, previously this part of the site was granted permission for up to 300 residential units under the outline consent. It's also been shown that a commercial use for the whole of the Novartis site is no longer viable. In addition, weight is attached to the development of this brownfield site within the built-up area, which has been redundant for 11 years. The scheme would also provide much-needed housing. Therefore, the principle of the proposal is considered appropriate. For the highways high impact, we've received comments from 2 separate highways consultants, the County Highways team and Stantec Transport Planning, both of whom agree that the scheme is appropriate in terms of its highway impacts. The scheme is also considered appropriate in terms of its appearance, layout, flood risk, ecology, impact on the residential community, and all other relevant planning considerations. The scheme is therefore recommended in accordance with the head of terms for legal agreements, which is in paragraph 6.148 of the report, and the proposed conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have 3 minutes. Thank you. You need to take where it says speaker over the far side there. That's okay.
I'm Jane Apostolou, Chair of Wimblehurst Road Residents Association, which was established in 1985. I'm here to represent our residents who are very concerned about this development. We've been working together with residents in Gordon Road, Richmond Road, Orchard Close and North Heath Lane since the first application for this site in 2018. And more recently to submit a collective response to this amended application for phase 1 and 2 and the newly granted application for phase 3 to what we all fear is an overdevelopment that will seriously affect road safety. Our objections are supported by Horsham, Den and Forest neighbourhood councils, and our concerns on highways, parking and overdevelopment are echoed by North Horsham Parish Council. According to figures provided by Sussex Police, these 2 applications combined will house more than 1,000 residents, further stretching policing resources. The surrounding road network is unable to accommodate this vast and, we fear, underestimated increase in traffic. The lack of immediate access to main road networks will also add to congestion in this high-density residential area. It will delay the arrival of ambulance and fire services, as well as causing difficulty in getting to school or work on time. The longer downtime of the Parsonage Road level crossing gates already causes long tailbacks and frustration in Parsonage Road, Wimblehurst Road and North Heath Lane. The roads are dangerous for cyclists, especially when being used by buses and commercial traffic. There is no room for additional cycle lanes. 578 limited parking spaces for the whole site will increase on-street parking on side roads. Richmond Road is already subject to a high level of non-residential on-street parking, and Collier's students also use the surrounding roads for parking. The substantial rise in the population of Horsham means it's already difficult for new residents to find a doctor or dentist. Our schools are already oversubscribed. The closest A&E is at East Surrey Hospital, a 40-minute drive away. On-site flooding has only now just been acknowledged by Lovells, the developer. We have already highlighted in our response drainage issues and local flooding evidence in properties in the neighbouring conservation area. The proposed demolition of the wings of the locally listed Novartis building could affect the stability of the clock tower.
Could you bring your comments to a conclusion, please?
The
Thank you.
evergreen cedar trees are also destined for removal, and the ecological benefits of the trees far outnumber the benefits of their proposed deciduous replacements. With these all gone, what are we left with?
Thank you. Thank you. I did say you have 3 minutes, so apologies, but thank you very much.
Shall I leave?
I'd like to invite Martin White, please. And you two have 3 minutes. Thank you.
I have lived adjacent to the Novartis site since 1974. I object to this application because the impact of the development on traffic movements and travel has not been adequately presented by the applicant. Currently, there are over 400 documents on the HDC planning portal that relate to the application. With such a volume of documentation, it's not easy to recognise when information relevant to this application has not been presented and discussed. For example, in the transport plan for the Mews site was a detailed analysis of the queues that could be caused by the railway level crossing. To quote paragraph 6.1 from the plan, the largest queue in the AM peak is 48 vehicles eastbound, 48 and 18 westbound. In the transport plan for the Lovell site, there is no reference to queue lengths at the crossing. Clearly Lovell and Stantec decided it was not relevant, but it most certainly is. When the barriers are eventually raised, a queue of vehicles accelerates quickly along an empty road towards the mini roundabout. The attention of the driver will be focused on watching for traffic from North Heath Lane entering the roundabout. If there is nothing inside, the driver will continue to sweep around to the left and have just 2 seconds to discover if there are cars emerging from or entering the Wimberhurst gate. This stream of traffic could compromise the safe egress from both site exits. The scenario is not considered in the Stage 1 RSA, nor in the WSCC review of the junctions summarised in paragraph 6.95 of the committee report. 6.98 of the report indicates, and I quote, if it is shown in the monitoring that this junction is worsening, HDC and WSCC can take a view as to whether or not action should be sought. This could take the form of utilising CIL monies to improve the junction, but there is no indication of what level of queuing or safety-related incidents would trigger considerations of an improvement, nor the extent to which CIL monies would be adequate. There is also no recognition of the 23, 23X and 98 bus stops in the by the Little Supermarket in King's Road. These routes offer independent access to the Crawley East and to the villages south towards Worthing, for which there is no rail link. Nor is there any mention of the 7 schools to the north of the site that require students and parents with children to cycle or walk across the level crossing. Together, these cohorts of pedestrians and cyclists substantially increase the use that would be made of the crossing, especially in the morning peak period when the long queues of traffic could increase the risk of accidents. I submit the lack of credible forecasts on traffic movement and volumes means the councillors do not yet have the information they need to make an informed decision on the application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to invite Emma Beard. Some of you will know Emma Beard is a district councillor, but is speaking this evening as a member of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and officers and members of the council. In the words of one of my childhood favourite authors, Dr. Seuss, I am the Loryx and I speak for the trees. I want you just to take a moment and imagine yourself as a tree, a cedar, an oak, maple, lime. Your roots disappearing deep into the rich earth, working together with the mycelium network, the original World Wide Web, communicating, supporting, working in community. The older that we get, the more life that we support. Above the ground, year after year, we grow taller, wider, with more and more branches. We grow leaves, perhaps changing colours over the season. Leaves, berries, cones, flowers, all supporting a myriad of life for the more than human world. Flora, lichen, fern, rowan, to fauna, shield bug, swift, peregrine falcon, pipistrelle bat, all sharing our gifts. Living like this, we thrive. Living like this, we support. We are community. Now, stepping back into our human selves, we can look and see the textures on the bark, notice the insects, spiders scurrying, perhaps smell the sweet sap run of all the blossoms. Then maybe we hear the distinct wing flap of a pigeon or the hammering of a woodpecker. Understanding our place within this complex web. I'm not disagreeing with the site being a place to build when houses are needed and expected. I'm just speaking for those that don't have a voice and making sure that they also have a place on this table. Within this site, there are 30 plus trees that are set to be felled in varying conditions, some perfectly healthy. Can it be another way? Our trees benefit us as humans on so many levels, combating the urban heat effect, absorbing carbon dioxide, filtering our polluted air. Here, I'm asking you to consider our future generations of both the human and the more than human, and know that you could look into your great-granddaughter's eyes with knowledge that the decisions that you have made here today are made for a world, a safe, beautiful and abundant place for her. In the words of Mary Oliver, an American poet, what shall we do with our one wild and precious life? Let the trees guide us on how and where to build, for some have stood here for longer than any of us, and potentially for many years beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And ask Nick Smith, please. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Nick Smith. I'm the planning consultant for this application at the former Novartis in Horsham. I'm speaking in favour of the proposals on behalf of the applicant, Level Partnerships, a national partnership housing specialist that goes beyond building homes to create inclusive, mixed tenure communities, working with councils, housing associations and residents to shape people-centred places with valuable green spaces, amenities and long-term social value. The committee resolved to grant permission for residential development at the eastern phase of the wider site in October. The scheme before you this evening for around 204 new homes and a commercial unit will complete the regeneration of this brownfield and sustainably located site. 35% of the homes would be affordable. This part of the Novartis site contains what is known as Building 3, a locally listed Art Deco style central tower with wings on either side. The tower is an impressive and important building, and its repair and reuse has been central in the design of this scheme. Whilst, as members attending the site visit last week will have seen, the wings of the building are in too poor a condition to retain, they will be replaced by high quality sympathetic replacement wings that have been designed with the Council's Conservation Officer. In response to consultation feedback, the scheme proposes a commercial unit at ground floor level of the converted Building 3. The vision for this use is that it creates community at the site, providing a meeting point for residents and a facility for socialising and home working. The landscaping scheme is high quality and extensive, with a central tree-lined boulevard retained as an intrinsic feature of the design. Whilst the remaining cedar trees are in too poor a condition to retain, they would be replaced by species agreed with the Council's tree officer, providing a forward-looking landscape design for the next stage of the site's life. Ecology, including a pair of peregrines that have been nesting, have been very carefully managed in close consultation with the Council's ecology advisors. The scheme is made up of houses and flats of different sizes to meet a wide range of occupier demand. All of the houses would be provided with car and cycle parking to meet the council standards, and the buildings have been designed as high quality places to live, with generous floor plans and private and communal garden spaces. The vision for the site focuses on well-being, quality and exemplary placemaking, creating a walkable, well-connected and distinctive community that enhances the historic Art Deco tower. The master plan prioritises landscape and public realm, strengthens links to local facilities, supports active travel and enriches biodiversity. By responding to the site's history, context and urban grain, the development fosters a sustainable,
Could you bring your comments to conclusion, please?
And inclusive place to live. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee.
Thank you very much. Turn the speaker off, please. Sorry. Thank you. Now ask Councillor Nigel Emery, Ward Councillor, to speak, and you have 5 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much for kindly allowing me to speak at short notice in respect to this application. I am the ward representative for Holbrook West, which is adjacent to Holbrook East, which is the ward for which the Novartis site is located. I'm speaking this evening as there are no representatives from Holbrook East available to speak, and also because I have, as a representative of Holbrook West, I've had considerable discussions with members of the local conservation area and from many residents of the area in respect to this application, as well as previous applications and also the application for phase 3. My main reason for objecting to this recommendation put by officers is because of the impact on local highways, especially on Wimblehurst Road and Parsonage Road. And I know that 2 speakers already spoken of that before. I cannot tell you how many times I've sat in a long traffic jam on Parsonage Road. There are occasions when up to 4 trains pass through the level crossing at Parsonage Road, and you can wait for up to 20 minutes. Cars run all the way from the level crossing to Wimblehurst Road, and in the other direction along Foundry Road and along the other part of Resident. It is an absolute nightmare. Similarly, particularly in the morning, the traffic along Wimblehurst Road backing up from the Warnham Road is very significant. The introduction of this development, well, a total of 449 residential units across these phases. I'm very concerned about the impact on local traffic. And whilst I appreciate that independent assessments have been done, I have considerable reservations about those, as already been highlighted by Martin. A particular concern I have is in relation to access onto Wimblehurst Road. As has been highlighted, there are very bad sight lines coming out from this development onto Wimblehurst Road, and it is extremely close to the mini roundabout, and the mini roundabout in itself has very poor sight lines. There are also issues with bus stops along North Heath Lane, which will tail back because they don't have they literally stop on the road. They can't go into the area. So I am very worried about the whole impact of traffic. Another point which I don't believe has been considered is the impact, the accumulative impact of the 2,000 homes in Mowbray. Whilst West Sussex County Council Highways believes that the residents of that area will not use North Heath Lane, but will instead use alternatives, Kings Road and Rusper Road, they clearly don't know what it's like to live here. People will not use Rusper Road and Kings Road because of the level crossing at Littlehaven. What they do is they will come through and use North Heath Lane, and this will create even more significant traffic, and I believe that needs to be further modelled. I'd also like to, in relation again to traffic, I think it's very, very important that this community space is used for retail purposes as a means to further reduce the impact of traffic. The nearest shops are between a half a mile and a mile from this development. And my fear is that people will use cars rather than walking because the distance is too great. By using that community space to put a shop, a coffee shop, it will help to reduce the traffic impact. I just finally want to make a mention of the cedar trees. They were indeed glorious. For 90 years, they were glorious. And it's very sad to see that due to a very poor maintenance regime over the last few years, that two of them are beyond repair and the others are in a very dangerous position. However, I'm delighted that they will be replaced with the Dawn Redwoods.
Could you bring your comments to conclusion, please, Councillor?
They will eventually grow to 100 feet, up to 180 feet high. They will be as grand as the cedar trees, and they will support biodiversity. So in conclusion, I would like to thank officers for this application. I'm overall in supportive of it. However, I have raised points about traffic and the need to ensure a community centre. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I invite the officers to respond, just make it clear to the public that the members of the Planning Committee have had a briefing on this particular application, and many of the members on the committee actually attended a site visit. Do any members wish to ask specific questions before I invite the officers, having heard what some of the public have said? Sorry?
Sorry, Chairman, are you going to let the officer respond?
We'll let
to
them
what
come back, but is
and
there
then come back.
anything specific you'd like them to come back on? Councillor Clark.
Just a specific question on the layout. The two-bedroom houses on the Wimblehurst Road were facing onto the road, but I couldn't see from the diagrams where the car provision, where the parking was, and how they accessed the public highway. Maybe you can just put it up on a bigger scale.
We will come to that in a moment. We're all coming forward. Be careful, be mindful that you will be able to ask questions later, but if there's a question you want clarification on from the officers, then please come forward. Councillor Vickers.
Yes, Chairman, I was going to say something, but I was going to ask a question, clarification. 247 parking spaces. I noticed that there is no garaging for the houses, but there is underground parking for the flats. I just want that clarified, please.
Thank you. Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed the density is 74 dwellings per hectare. What I'm not sure about is how that compares with the previous approval for that section of the site. So if there's any clarification on that, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Livingstone, and I'll come to you, Councillor Trollope.
Could the officers clarify, it states in the report that 10 of the units will comply with M4(3) standards, this is for wheelchair accessibility. Could they clarify how many bedrooms each of those units will be, please?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trollope.
If the officers could clarify how many years they estimate the trees will take to get to a comparable height to the ones being removed. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite the officers to come back on the comments made by members of the public and also the points for clarification. Thank you.
Okay, quite a lot there. So in terms of the level crossing, that is something we went into detail in relation to phase 3, which is more applicable to that because they've got that at the entrance onto Parsonage Road, but it is applicable to this site as well. So under that application, it was determined that, I mean, yes, there is waiting times. There's no denying that. We've all been caught in that level crossing, and there is a bit of a wait. But it was determined that with this application, including phase 1 and 2, that this won't significantly increase those queues. So yes, there are queues, but this the cumulative effect of both phase 1 and 2 is not going to result in those queues getting any significantly longer. There's still going to be queues, but this won't be significantly increase those queues. So in terms of the access on Wimblehurst Road, it's not a well-used access, but it is an access which was used previously for the Novartis site, which is going to be brought back into use, and they're going to reinstate the right turn lane into the site. So access has been thoroughly assessed, and we've had two reports from transport consultants on this, from both our own highways and an independent assessment. So they all feel that the access is appropriate. It was to include what's known as a Copenhagen crossing, which gives right of way to pedestrians, but it was considered that the access is too wide for that, so the Copenhagen crossing is no longer proposed. So there are some minor amendments to the access, but it will stay mainly as it is, and it's considered an appropriate access that is considered safe. In terms of transport assessments, it does take into account another of the significant junctions, that's been agreed with the county as to which junctions they assess. So overall, most of the junctions are within capacity with this site in place. The only one which is going to be slightly affected is going to be the one right on the corner there on Parsonage Road, Wimblehurst Road, and North Heath Lane. However, the highways have stated that that's not significant to warrant refusal of this application. So under the MPBF, there's quite a high bar as to when you consider the cumulative impacts of traffic are going to be, I can't remember the exact wording now, result in a significant impact. I can find the wording, but there is quite a high bar there. So they've not requested any further actions for that junction. However, there is a requirement in the report for that to be monitored. So this was a result of the previous outline application where there was much discussion on traffic impacts. And as part of the councillor's concern last time, we put this monitoring on that junction. And then if it comes to pass that the impact of this application and phase 1, 2 and 3 is going to impact on that junction, then we could look then as to how we can potentially address that. So that's not something requested by the highways, but it is something we put on the previous application, which we've carried over onto this one, which we feel is appropriate. But I think what's important with the transport is this is significantly less transport impact when compared to the outline consent, which was for the 300 units and the 25,000 square metres of commercial floor space. So when you compare that to this application for 449 units, the transport impact is much less. So that's a consideration. For the community space, that was introduced at the request of the councillors at the last committee for phase 3, where they requested that we could have some sort of commercial community use. It could potentially be used for retail, but we don't limit that down. So there's a condition which allows certain uses, one of them is retail, one of them is like a community use or an office space. So you want to limit the uses to things which are appropriate within the building, but then you don't want to limit it too much that it would become unviable. So, but the idea is that the agents is that it will be like a communal office space for the benefit of the residents, which will have some sort of cafe use. So parking, yes, the 247 parking spaces, and there's a number of those underground at the basement level. That'll be under the. There is a basement level at the moment under the existing buildings on site, so that will be used for the parking. I don't know, was that the parking question? I can't remember now.
Yeah, there are no garages on site.
No, there's no garages, no. They don't have garages, no. There's parking. I haven't got a parking plan, I'm afraid, but there are parking areas. So that if you look down, so this area all here is parking. So these areas, all the area here is parking, and there's parking here in front of these houses here. So there's parking along here as well, and parking to the side. So it's not very clear, I'm afraid, with the parking. I don't think I've got a better plan. We'll have a look in a minute. Sorry, the parking plans have been submitted, but I didn't include that. So with the density, this is much less compared to the outline consent, because the outline consent of this part of the site was for up to 300 dwellings. So this application is only for 204, so it's a much lower density, and just in terms of the numbers when you compare it to the outline consent. For the M43 standards, I'm afraid I don't have that to hand about how many bedrooms they would have, I'm afraid. I think that's everything, yeah.
Okay, any further questions from members of the committee? No? Okay. Whilst we just look at this parking, see if we can find that. Once we've answered that, I will then move to the vote on this particular item. Councillor Croker, yes.
Sorry, Chair, I thought you said members were going to have some time to discuss this.
No, I said you would have the opportunity to ask further questions, speaking once. And I did just recently ask, is there any further questions from the members whilst they were looking for this answer to the question? Do you have a question to ask then, Councillor Croker?
I have a few comments which might lead to questions.
I'll come back to you in a moment.
Thank you,
Councillor.
So you can see all the parking areas in the sort of like red, highlighted in red there.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Clark? Happy to zoom into any particular bit.
It was the ones along the top.
These ones.
No, to the right.
Here.
Slightly to the left of that.
These two.
Yeah,
So there's spaces here.
Okay.
If you can see my cursor. Thank you.
Councillor, I will come to you in a moment, Councillor Livingstone, but I'll come to Councillor Croker first.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start off by commenting that MPPF para 136 advises us to retain existing trees where possible. So the question I'm thinking of is, has the developer actually tried to retain existing trees where possible? Or, and this is pertaining to my question about density, has been looking more at how many units can be got onto the site. In particular, the use of this undercroft to protect one of the oaks on Parsonage Road seems, how can I put it, optimistic. So I'm not happy with that. The cedars we've already heard about. So I have some concerns around density in respect of the existing tree cover of that site. Whether that's a question or not, I don't know, but I'm expressing my concerns. Thank you.
I mean, it is unfortunate that can't retain the trees. They are nice trees, and in a woodland setting, that would be great. But in this setting of an urban environment, it's just not appropriate to have these kind of trees, which have they have a danger. They drop branches, and as I said, there's only 7 remaining on site, 2 of which are going to have to be removed. So that will leave you with gaps. And the arboriculturist feels that over time there's going to be pressure to remove those trees, especially as they would have to be highly managed and would present a risk to cars and people in terms of branches dropping. So yes, it's unfortunate, but this is seen as a much better, a consistent approach to remove the trees and completely replace them with the dawn redwoods, which we feel are appropriate. And we put them in there at a significant size, so they have impact straight away, and that would be agreed under the landscaping scheme. And as the councillor said, they would eventually grow to a very significant height and be much more manageable on site. So it is unfortunate, but we feel that there is clear justifications as to why the dawn redwoods, the cedar trees need to be removed.
Councillor Livingston.
Yes, I'm concerned that we don't know how many of the dwellings will be actually M4/3 wheelchair accessible in regards to the number of bedrooms, number of bedrooms per house. If you consider, people will be living with their families, so there could be 2 or 3 bedrooms. Some people will be living with carers. If these are all going to be 1-bedroom units, I don't think that's really suitable. So I'd like that confirmed, please.
Okay, thank you.
Obviously, there is reference to this within paragraph 1.2, but as my colleague has said, we cannot give you right now, Councillor Livingston, the exact mix of which ones would provide for that. Clearly, and we've had this discussion at committee before, they're desirable, we encourage them, but they're not actually a policy requirement yet. Hopefully they will be soon with the progress of the local plan. I would suggest we add an informative in terms of encouragement of larger units. If I understand that's what you're suggesting would be appropriate, Councillor Livingstone, and obviously we could have that separate conversation with them post committee if there's a resolution to grant. Thank you.
Councillor Vickers.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I won't try not to repeat what's already been said, and I'd like to thank the officers for the site visit and a very clear report. It's a shame there's no employment on this overall site, but we are where we are. It's also a shame that we're losing the cedar trees. However, I totally understand why that is, and I accept what the officers are saying. I have got some concerns, as you might expect, about the number of parking spaces on site. A lot of houses have more than 2 cars, and actually parking outside those houses is going to be an interesting experience for some of them. However, we need housing. This is a brownfield site, and I've had some reassurance from the officers about the access being suitable. So I thank them for that, and I shall support the recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Trollope, yes.
I just wanted as well to thank the officers for the report, and I do go back in time. It is a shame that we lost a research and development site, and a lot of valuable research happened here, but I accept that's in the past. We need the housing, that the site is there, and that it's also a shame that there's no employment opportunities here, but let's hope that we can address this somewhere else sometime soon. So I will support the motion as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify and perhaps to be noted in the minutes, officers will add an informative regarding the M43 standard and the encouragement of larger units to meet that standard. Thank you.
Any further comments? No? Okay, therefore I will go to the vote. The recommendation is to approve full planning permission subject to appropriate conditions and the completion of the necessary section 106 agreement within 4 months of the decision of this committee or such longer period as agreed by the director of the place acting reasonably and properly. All those in favour, please show.
(11-4).
All those against?
1 against
Any abstentions?
and 1 abstention.
Therefore, the recommendation has been approved. Thank you. If a member of the public wish to leave, you can do so, but you're also very welcome to stay.
You can wait 20 minutes now.
Yeah, I have done. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 6, DC 25-1327. Land east of Mousdale Close, Rectory Lane, Ashington. Please could the officer present the application to committee? I've just got a technical glitch. They don't want to see me, I'm sure. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, Sam?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. By way of a verbal update, the application has now received, the applicant has now provided a letter outlining interest from 4 registered providers regarding taking on the affordable units for this application. In addition, 4 further public representations have been received since publishing the committee report. These are from 3 addresses and have not raised any new material planning considerations. Finally, an additional condition should be added to secure 110 litres water consumption per person per day. This was omitted from the previous committee report. So the proposal seeks full planning permission for the erection of 74 dwellings, including 25 affordable dwellings and 4 M43 dwellings, site access, landscaping, parking on the land east of Moostall Close, Ashington. This is a draft allocation within the emerging local plan for 75 homes. So this is an aerial image of the application site, which is currently an undeveloped agricultural field located along Rectory Lane to the west of the built-up area of Ashington. The built-up area here is shown with the black dotted line and annotated there for you. The existing developments of Pen Garden and Moostall Close are located to the west, with the consented Shankesbury Nurseries development to the east. To the south of the site is the existing woodland, and to the north is Rectory Lane, which is tree-lined. Some photos here for you, north and west across the site. The top photo specifically looks at Rectory Lane, and the bottom photo looks at dwellings within Pen Gardens, adjacent to the boundary. Moving on to photos south and east, the bottom photo here looks towards the boundary with Shankesbury Nurseries, which is currently under development as a housing scheme. This is the site plan for the proposal. As you can see, it's set out as a looping internal road with a cul-de-sac to the west. Dwellings include a mix of detached, semi-detached townhouses and a 2.5-storey flat block to the west. The layout includes a central area of green space with a suds basin to the south, which is annotated there. This slide just shows some typical elevations, including the architectural style and use of materials. This is considered to present locally characteristic design with a range of materials scattered across the site to add some interest. The site access is onto Rectory Lane. This slide here just shows the access itself with visibility displays. The proposal would result in 35 two-way trips in the AM and 32 in the PM, just in the peaks they are. West Sussex are satisfied that the access would operate with a short queuing delay, and this has been calculated using national TRIX data. The impact of vehicles in the network capacity has also been considered by West Sussex County Council Highways Authority, who confirmed the proposal would result in no capacity concerns within the local network. This has been calculated to include the cumulative impact of development consented and planned towards 2030. So this slide here just shows you those visibility displays and the views that you would get from the new access. This slide shows you the 2 pedestrian accesses, the 2 core accesses that pedestrians may use from the site. The top route is along the existing pavement, where tactile crossings would be placed at the 4 existing access points there. The lower route is the existing public right-of-way from the Shankesbury site next door down towards the village core. This is set to be upgraded for year-round use as part of a legal agreement secured within the Shankesbury Nurseries development. This is just to show the relationship between the site and the 2 existing major developments within Ashington. They're all annotated there. You can see how the site fits amongst the consented development and the existing built developments to the west. Just a slide here to show the policy allocations for those developments, with land west of Ashington and Shankesbury as neighbourhood plan allocations and the application site as an emerging local plan allocation. So in summary, the site will provide 74 dwellings, including 25 affordable dwellings. The site is a draft allocation within the emerging local plan, and as set out within the officer's report, in light of the current housing land supply, a tilted balance with presumption in favour is engaged in this instance. The proposal accords with the Shaping Development in Horsham District Guidance document and is considered a sustainable location for development as underpinned by the emerging local plan evidence base. The council therefore should consider the application positively. All other aspects have been found acceptable, subject to appropriate planning conditions as set out in the officer's report. It's therefore recommended that permission is granted accordingly, subject to conditions detailed below and the completion of a legal agreement pursuant to section 106. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite the first public speaker, and that is Sarah Naylor, please. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Naylor and I'm a resident of Ashington. I'm here to strongly object to this application. The site is not allocated for development in Ashington Neighbourhood Plan. As residents, we engage in that process in good faith. It was designed to ensure that growth happens in the right place and with the right infrastructure. Approving this application would undermine that plan and disregard the voice of the local community. Southern Water expects this development to impact existing sewer networks, which is already under pressure. Development should not proceed where basic infrastructure cannot cope. In addition, there has been no corresponding increase in local healthcare provisions, GP access, hospital capacity or ambulance services. This raises serious concerns about how this level of growth can be safely supported. Rectory Lane is a narrow road and for those of us who use it every day know its limitations. The developer's traffic assessment does not reflect the reality of vehicle movements. Rectory Lane and the pavement is in a state of disrepair and the extra traffic from the homes along with construction vehicles will create significant safety concerns for residents, pedestrians and other road users. Sussex Police have objected, stating they do not have staffing levels to support further development, and this development must be considered alongside other developments in surrounding villages, which together are replacing cumulative pressures on shared infrastructure and services. This development is not in the right place, it is not supported by infrastructure, and it's not aligned to the neighbourhood plan. I respectfully ask the committee to listen to local residents and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite Megan Smith to speak, please. And you also have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members. The scheme before you represents a policy-led and sustainable extension to Ashington that delivers much-needed housing, including 25 affordable homes, in a location identified by the Council as appropriate for growth. I will briefly focus on 2 key matters that sit at the heart of the planning balance for this site. Firstly, the plan-led context and the role this site plays in future housing delivery for Ashington and for Horsham. The site is a draft allocation within the emerging Horsham local plan, forming part of the Council's planned housing strategy for Ashington. While the local plan is still under examination, the site's allocation remains an important material consideration, confirming the Council's evidence-based view that this is an appropriate and sustainable location for new homes. We, of course, recognise the importance of the Ashington Neighbourhood Plan and the significant work that has gone into preparing it. However, planning policy is evolving as the district moves towards a new local plan, and the emerging strategy clearly identifies this site as part of the future pattern of housing delivery for the district. It is also important to note that while the neighbourhood plan allocations have recently been approved, this site is now the only draft housing allocation for Ashington for the next 10 to 15 years. Secondly, the proposal delivers much needed affordable housing. There are currently a staggering 151 households on the Ashington Housing Register awaiting accommodation. In response to this, the scheme has been amended to better reflect this fundamental local need. This includes an increase in family-sized 3-bedroom affordable homes, the type most needed locally, to help families and younger households remain within the village as their needs change over time. In addition to this, a financial contribution is also proposed to provide further affordable housing locally in the district. Taken together, the proposal supports the emerging housing strategy for Horsham while delivering meaningful and much-needed affordable housing within Ashington. For those reasons, and having regard to the officer recommendation before you, we respectfully ask members to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would now invite Hugh James to speak, please. And you have 3 minutes as well. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, members. Hugh James, Director of Planning at ECE. I will briefly address some of the technical matters raised and some of the tangible benefits that this scheme can deliver for Ashington. In terms of highways, we note concerns raised locally regarding Rectory Lane. It's important to emphasise that the local highway authority raises no objection following their detailed technical review, and they're satisfied that the development can be accommodated safely within the local network. The scheme includes a safe new vehicular access and importantly delivers pedestrian improvements along Rectory Lane, strengthening connections between the site and the village, alongside a range of additional measures, including tactile paving to junctions, new bus shelters, a crossing on the London Road, cycle storage in the village centre, and a travel plan for the site. In terms of biodiversity, the scheme delivers a 10% biodiversity net gain, alongside a range of on-site ecological enhancements, including swift boxes, new landscaping, habitat creation across the site, and importantly, their long-term management. The scheme provides meaningful community benefits through public open space within the heart of the development, informal play areas and landscaped green spaces. A financial contribution of £900,000 towards local community infrastructure, including local education, will be provided, potentially to help with the future extension of the primary school. The surface water drainage design is addressed through a combination of SUDs, below ground storage and attenuation basin, supported by the LFA and officers. As a draft local plan allocation, the proposal delivers much needed homes, affordable housing, biodiversity enhancements, public open space and local infrastructure improvements. A Section 106 agreement to secure these enhancements is well advanced with the local authority. For these reasons and in line with the officer recommendation, we respectfully ask members to support the application and grant planning permission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I'd like to invite Councillor Graham McPherson from Ashington Parish Council to speak. And you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Chairman, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. This site is a draft allocation in the emerging Horsham local plan, which has not been adopted or passed inspection and appears to be receiving undue weight in this determination. The MAID Ashington Neighbourhood Plan is a legal authority that is protected against the tilted balance, paragraph 14 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which states that a community neighbourhood plan must be protected if it allocates housing, which it does. The decision report seeks to diminish the weight of paragraph 14 protections against the Ashington Neighbourhood Plan, which causes harm to the spatial strategy in conflict with policy ASH1. It fails to provide sustainable connectivity in conflict with policies ASH2 and ASH5. Permitting 74 unallocated homes would undermine the strategic planning for the village. It would ignore the existing landscape and transport constraints of Rectory Lane, which are explicitly mentioned in your emerging plan, but largely ignored by the applicant. It also fundamentally contradicts the democratic will of the people of Ashington, who have developed a neighbourhood plan in good faith. Paragraph 12 of the National Planning Performance Framework states that where a planning application conflicts with an up-to-date development plan, permission should not usually be granted. It also states that the council should only make decisions that deviate from an up-to-date development plan if material considerations suggest this should be allowed. Whilst the local plan is not up to date, the Ashington Neighbourhood Plan is, and significantly forms part of the development plan. The Planning Inspectorate appeal in the case of land at Old Park Lane, Farnham, the inspector asserts that it is wrong to conflate the housing requirement of the local planning authority, which can change, with the housing requirement of a neighbourhood plan, which is fixed at the time that the plan is made. Ashington meets its housing requirement and its plan remains valid, in date and protected from the tilted balance by paragraph 14. The report also contains 3 significant misdirections that I'd like to draw your attention to. Firstly, paragraph 115 is a clear misdirection. The site is a draft allocation in the emerging local plan, HA5, but the council appear to be giving too much importance to it, and this conflicts with the appeal court decision of Woodcock Holdings versus the Secretary of State. Secondly, in the concluding comments of paragraph 115, in relation to the expiry of the neighbourhood plan protections, this is also misleading. The Planning Inspectorate states that having a 5-year period for paragraph 14 protection is binary and doesn't erode over time. The relevant dates are therefore the dates on which the decision falls within the period of protection, not some spurious date in relation to the signing of the Section 106 agreement, which may or may not be agreed, which we contest is irrelevant to this matter. Notwithstanding this, the planning appeal decision shows that whilst a neighbourhood plan older than 5 years may no longer trigger paragraph 14 protection, it still has weight beyond the period in a tilted balance scenario, as shown in the case of Crane versus the Secretary of State. And thirdly, paragraph 117 applies the wrong test. There's a legal presumption that a conflict with a neighbourhood plan, which is proven in your report, significantly outweighs the benefit of the proposal. This is recognised in paragraph 113 of your report. To succeed, the council must refute this presumption. Your report doesn't do so and instead tries to claim benefits outweigh harm, which is not the test required. The report fails to recognise the significant harm that is achieved in overriding the community-led neighbourhood plan and does not include this site. And that harm outweighs, I would suggest, the marginal housing supply benefits delivered by this development. The neighbourhood plan makes an allocation for the period 2019 to 2031. Granting permission would fundamentally erode the ethos of empowering communities. It would send a clear message to communities that the views don't count and their efforts to support well-managed, sustainable development through a sound neighbourhood plan that should be protected to the National Planning Policy Framework count for nothing. The report largely also ignores the legitimate concerns of the 109 residents who objected to the proposal.
Could you bring your comments to conclusion, please?
Shortly. Despite claiming that the council is always listening, learning and improving. For these reasons, Ashington Parish Council requests that the application is refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I'd like to invite local ward councillor, Councillor Alan Manton, please. And Councillor Manton, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, fellow councillors, I speak as ward councillor on behalf of Ashington Parish Council and the 147 objectors from 108 separate households and residents in my parish. Not for some outside developer. This application must be refused outright. The statutory development plan is the Horsham District Planning Framework plus the Made Neighbourhood Ashington Neighbourhood Plan of June 2021. That neighbourhood plan is less than 5 years old, and contains specific site allocations that meet Ashington's housing need. The NPPF paragraph 14 is therefore engaged in full. The tilted balance does not apply. The development plan, not some future emerging possibility or advice notes, must carry decisive weight. Ashington Neighbourhood Plan Policy Ash 1 could not be clearer. The development proposals outside the built-up area boundary and the site allocations will not be permitted unless they represent appropriate countryside uses, are on previously developed land, or relate to the retention of commercial businesses. This site is none of those things. It is a greenfield site outside of the built-up area boundary and outside the two allocated sites. Those two allocated sites have already delivered or secured 226 dwellings, exceeding the neighbourhood plan's total of 225 homes. Ashington's own housing needs survey identified only 123 to 200 homes needed to 2031. That need has been met. The Neighbourhood Plan has done precisely what the Localism Act intended. In paragraph 6.6 of the officer's report, he explicitly confirms the proposed proposal is therefore not considered in accordance with the spatial strategy set within the adopted development plan. This carries weight against the proposal. It confirms the scheme fails to accord with policy Ash 1 and conflicts with HDPF policies 2, 3, 4 and 26. In section 3.8, the Council's own strategic planning team states, and I quote, NPF paragraph 14 is engaged in the Ashington Neighbourhood Plan, is A, less than 5 years old, and B, includes policies and housing allocations to meet its identified housing requirement. Yet, having admitted the statutory conflict and the engagement of para 14, the report then tries to wave it away with an emerging local plan, still unexamined, hearings not even starting until April 2026, limited weight only. The shaping development in Horsham District Advice Note, which the report itself concedes at para 6.11, is guidance only and does not form policy and does not alter the statutory decision-making framework and the district 5-year supply shortfall. That is circular, self-undermining reasoning. The officer's report destroys its own recommendations in its own paragraphs. You cannot admit a fundamental breach of the statutory development plan and the protection of the recently made neighbourhood plan, then claim non-statutory guidance and an emerging document of limited weight somehow override it. That is not planning law. That is wishful thinking. The parish council's objection hammers this home. The two neighbourhood plan sites have already satisfied local need until 2031. The transport assessment is unreliable. It was conducted during road closures. Infrastructure is stretched and unsustainable. Community engagement was woeful. The report's own consultees, LLFA, still objects on SUDS standards. Southern Water requires phasing for new sewer capacity, and Sussex Police object unless £24,000 is paid. This exposes further flaws. Members, this is not a close call. The planning development plan requires refusal. The parish council require refusal. 108 households require refusal. The made neighbourhood plan requires refusal. The officer report itself reveals the fatal conflict that cannot be cured by section 106 payments or conditions. I therefore insist on refusal on the grounds that the proposal is contrary to the statutory development plan, specifically Ash 1, policies 2, 3, 4 and 26, and the protections of NPF paragraph 14. If you approve this application, you do not just undermine one village, you tell every parish in Horsham District that their made neighbourhood plans
bring
are
your
worthless.
comments to conclusion, please.
Certainly. You tell every parish in Horsham District that their made neighbourhood plans are worthless the moment an applicant waives an emerging draft and a supply shortfall.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Any members wishing for, sorry,
Well, I think I should say something.
before I ask members for any clarification, legal officer would like to make a few comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not in a position to make comment on authorities that have not been provided to me beforehand. When I say authority, I mean court decisions. It wouldn't be expected of a judge, and I'm certainly not doing it as a principal planning solicitor. Had I had those in advance, I would be in a position to comment now. I cannot. However, I am in a position to comment on an authority that I am perfectly well aware of. That particular one is the Crown on the application of Thurston Parish Council on Mid-Suffolk and Mid-Suffolk District Council and Blore Homes. It's a 2022 decision. If you want the citation, EWCA Civ 1417. That was an application made to the Court of Appeal by the Parish Council in very similar circumstances to this. And the wording of their neighbourhood plan said, just like Ashington's, I'll actually turn to Ashington's first. Ash 1 says, new development in Ashington Parish shall be focused within the built-up area boundary of Ashington Village as identified on the policies map. What the Court of Appeal said in Thurston's case, new development should be focused within the settlement boundary. But what the Court of Appeal decided was that focused did not mean that it should be exclusively concentrated within that boundary. It meant that it should be predominantly there, focused there, but just as I'm focusing on Councillor Livingston now, I can see things in my periphery. And that's what the Court of Appeal said, that they envisaged things elsewhere if it was appropriate. So you move on to other parts of Ash 1, and it talks about development proposals outside the built-up area boundary in the site won't be permitted unless, and then there are three things to take into account. So it's disingenuous to present this as an exclusive zone of development and that everything outside it is not permitted at all. We shouldn't be considering it on those terms, and that is why the report has been written as it has and presented to you as it has today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any okay, Councillor Raby, yes.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's in relation to the letter about the provider. I just wanted to get a little bit of clarity because that's obviously a big worry. If no one's going to take things on, then that doesn't provide the housing. So just a little bit of clarity on that, please.
Any other member wishing to clarity? Councillor Croker, yes.
Thank you, Chair. This question of housing demand, or housing need rather. Public speakers referred to the Ashington neighbourhood plan and recent development having met those numbers. But yet NPPF 62, I think, refers to using the standard method, which probably wasn't in place when the Ashington neighbourhood plan was created. Which number trumps the other is my question. Thank you.
Councillor Vickers, you wishing to speak, or okay? I wasn't sure.
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me. I have some sympathy with the parish council and local member. However, members will know that an application in Southwater of considerably more homes was recommended for refusal by the planning officers and went to appeal, and we lost that appeal on the basis that we don't have a 5-year land supply. I would have significant concerns about refusing this based on the neighbourhood plan. I totally support the fact that we have neighbourhood plans and they should be adhered to, but without a local plan in place, we are somewhat hand-tied, I think the word is. So I understand why the officers are recommending this one for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Trollope, yes, and I'll come to you afterwards, Councillor Mercer.
Thank you. I'm going to admit I didn't quite follow Councillor McPherson's arguments. I was just wondering if the officers could just give a very brief summary of what rate we should give it. I do realize that the solicitor, and I'm sorry I forgot your name, gave a response as well. I'm still minded to support the officer's recommendation. I just want reassurance that the arguments that were put forward are either or not valid. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mercer, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Which is around similar subject. It's particularly about the SD pan and its weight, because as Councillor Manton pointed out, very clearly it says in here this is advice, guidance, and does not form policy. The report then goes on to give it weight. And in particular, it says in 614, and particularly part 3 of 614, that it says at the beginning, all the following criteria will be met. So applications will be considered positively, provided all the following criteria will be met. So, okay, that's a guidance to developers. But item 3 says the proposal demonstrates it meets local housing needs or will assist the retention and enhancement of community facilities and services. Now, in this case, the Ashington Neighbourhood Plan was designed and completed to meet Ashington's local housing needs, and in fact has done so. So how is it that we're seeing that criteria as having been met when actually the plan has already met it? So but for this particular application, how are we seeing that this therefore gives weight to the SDPAP? I don't understand that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Noel, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of questions, really. Right at the beginning, with the housing mix, I know this was mentioned, and I just want to compare it to other buildings. We've got two 2.5 storey flat blocks. How many other buildings in the area of this proposed development consist of 2.5 storeys? I know Ashington fairly well, and I can't recall any houses of that height in the area. Perhaps I could be told something different, because I don't believe there are any houses in that area. A second point that I'd like to bring up is the sewerage problem, which is outlined on page 78, and it's 3.15, where Southern Water say that there is no capacity within the present network for the sewerage flow from this development. Now, I know that you've got a preoccupation condition number 12 on page 106, but bearing in mind there is a lot of publicity at the moment about foul water spilling out into our fields and villages, how is this intended to be completed in time for this development to go ahead? I can't see it happening.
Thank you. I will now take no more clarification points, and the officers will come back to you on the points that have been raised. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll begin with a brief recap on paragraph 11 and 14 of the NPPF and the impact that has on the neighbourhood plan. So, as the report sets out, the neighbourhood plan was made in June 21 and meets its housing need. Therefore, for a period of 5 years from June 21, so until June this year, it accords with paragraph 14 of the NPPF. What paragraph 11 says, and follow the train of thought with me, what paragraph 11 says is the tilted balance is in play because of the local housing need and housing delivery. We're currently at a 1.7 year housing land supply. So the tilted balance is in play in this instance. Paragraph 14 then says in situations where the presumption in favour is applicable, so in this instance, where the neighbourhood plan accords with those two factors, so it's less than 5 years old and meets its own housing need, this is likely to be significantly and demonstrably outweighing the benefits. So in this instance, the neighbourhood plan accords with that. We have a tilted balance that is in play. However, conflict with the main neighbourhood plan would is likely to significantly and demonstrably push against that. What the report does is it sets out the harm and it assesses the harm of the proposal. It acknowledges the conflict with the neighbourhood plan, which is given significant weight. The SD plan, as you clearly set out, is guidance. What that guidance seeks to do is acknowledge the housing land supply we currently have, acknowledge the applications and how housing will need to be approved outside of adopted development plans and outside the adopted spatial plan, and seek to give officers guidance as to where that development should be most favourably sited. In this instance, what the report sets out is an acknowledgement that the neighbourhood plan would be in conflict. However, given the significant benefits of a housing supply, including the affordable housing, and the limited harm identified in any other aspect, the conflict with the neighbourhood plan itself in this instance is not alone significant enough to warrant a refusal of this application. It is also noted that, yes, the paragraph 14 does set a binary 5 years or less before the date on which the that decision was made. We are within that 5 years at this time, but that would in effect expire in June. So it puts us right on the brink of that. Hopefully that clarifies just with the tilted balance and the SD pan where that puts us. Again, the emerging plan allocation is a draft allocation that does not form part of an adopted plan, and it is given limited weight. However, the evidence base which supports that this siting of this site as an allocation is given weight and supports this as a sustainable site. So that there is no attempt at being disingenuous. It is just a clear setting out of what the harms would be, what the negatives would be, what the benefits would be, and a balance at the end. So to move on to separate matters, and I'll just address them in the order they've come up. So firstly, sewer and foul. So as has been outlined, Southern Water have confirmed that they don't currently have capacity to meet the needs of the development as a whole. They've indicated they've got approximately 50% capacity. So what the officers have done in that instance is to put condition 12, which I can get on the screen for you here. And what that does is it requires a phasing of the development and where's the wording? A management maintenance along with delivery by Southern Water. So essentially what this is doing is it's requiring the applicant to go to Southern Water, arrange for a phasing of the development which should match the Southern Water's capacity. So it will ensure that development can't exceed Southern Water's capacity. Just worth noting that Southern Water can't technically refuse an application for a developer to connect into the sewer network. So Southern Water has separate legislation which requires them to meet up with capacity. So that makes it very difficult for us to refuse purely on lack of capacity, because a separate regime should be maintaining that. However, what we can do, and we have done by condition 12, is just to make sure that the two stay in line and we don't have the development exceeding capacity and creating problems. Regarding healthcare and education, as noted in the report, the proposal is still liable, and those facilities would be paid for by SIL where expansion was needed. It's referenced the Rectory lane and the access and congestion. So as I outlined in my opening remarks, the proposal has been reviewed by West Sussex County Council. It's also been through pre-application with West Sussex County Council, who have assessed the capacity of Rectory Lane, and they have assessed that in accumulation with the consented development and planned development to 2030, they are satisfied that there are no capacity concerns within the local network, including on Rectory Lane. Regarding the imposition of construction vehicles, there is a condition for construction environment management plan, which can include controls on construction vehicles. There's also a condition for hours of operation for construction to limit those to the sociable hours. Regarding the sustainability of the site, let's go back to this slide here. The closest bus stop would be within approximately 800 metres. That is beyond West Sussex guidance for the closest bus stop, but they are happy in this instance that that would be easily accessible and would be factored into walk times. Additionally, with the public right-of-way to the south and Ashington having a good supply of services and facilities, this is considered to be a sustainable site. Additionally, with the evidence base of the emerging local plan in that allocation, the sustainability is assessed. Okay, so with clarification regarding the affordable housing registered providers. So throughout the application stage, we always encourage applicants to engage with registered providers. In this instance, the applicant's done so, and they came back to us after we'd written the application to say they've had a meeting with, they have an agent which does it for them, and they've had talks with 4 registered providers, which are all very positive, and they've given us a letter to that effect, just to provide some level of comfort. But as an authority, we are satisfied that there is interest in this site for those registered providers. Regarding housing need for the neighbourhood plan versus the district. So at the time the neighbourhood plan was made, a housing need assessment was undertaken. That was undertaken, I believe 2017, and that looked at the housing need for up until 2031. That need is what is met in the neighbourhood plan. However, when we're assessing SD PAN and looking at whether it accords with those policies and should be considered favourably, we're looking at, does it meet local need? For that, we're meaning district-wide, which is, as outlined before, the 1.7 years. So it would meet housing need within the district where there is significant need. Regarding the 2.5 storey dwellings, so the 2.5 storey blocks. So as you can see here, the flat blocks are 2.5 stories. Some of the dwellings also include accommodation within the rafters. So within the site itself, it would have 2.5 storey as a character there, with additional dwellings within the area in Newbury Nurseries, which is sited to the north. So there is precedent for that within the local area. If I have missed any points, please come back to me. Yeah.
Councillor Knoll, obviously there's a new development to the north of this site, which I know Nicola was the case officer. Oh, to the east, sorry. Nicola was the case officer. So that's why I was aware. And I was just checking with Nicola when you were asking that question in terms of where there are other. So in the new developments that have been granted in the vicinity, there are other 2.5 storey buildings.
Okay, so in a rural village, which is predominantly 1 and 2 storey housing, this new development is introducing the 2.5 because there's one already approved but not yet built for 2.5. Is that what you were saying?
Well, generally anything that has a dormer in the roof is 2.5. So, you know, I think these are, when you have 2.5 storey buildings, they're not significantly higher than your average 2-storey house because the accommodation is within the roof slope, as you can see on the slide here.
But it is changing the street scene, isn't it, for a rural village?
Sorry, I think, Chair, I think any addition to the housing stock within a village will change the street scene. And so you have to, it is a matter for you as sitting in judgment here to make that planning judgment as to whether you think that's acceptable. And just to come back on the local plan, I might point out that there's actually only a minimum floor of 225 dwellings to be built during the period 2019 to 2031, which it doesn't set a maximum.
Councillor Livingston, yes.
Yeah, okay. 2.5 floor houses, not very suitable for elderly and disabled access. And I note on the report, the only M43 suitable for wheelchair access are going to be 1-bedroom flats. I just hope they're not at the first level. Once again, we're not taking into account the population of elderly people and disabled, which is quite substantial. And I think we should be doing a bit more than what we're doing at the moment.
Thank you. Yes, obviously very supportive of M43 and M42. In this instance, we've got four dwellings. As I've said previously, there is no policy requirement for us to insist on this. We secure these through officers engaging with applicants. The dwellings proposed would be 4 of them. 2 would be affordable rental for registered providers, and 2 would be open market. All 4 dwellings would come with accessible bays. I would like that number to be higher in future policy, including in the current draft consultation for the MPPF. That requirement is in there. So that's something we can look to for the future. But right now, there's no policy basis to insist on it, but we do have 4 of them, which is a benefit.
We do have the Equality Act 2010, where we should be taking into account the protected characteristics of disabled and elderly residents. And are we doing that? We put there's always a statement in the reports, which is the same statement in every report, about how we are considering a public service duty to promote equality and comply with the Equality Act. Are we doing that? Perhaps I can ask the solicitor for her opinion on that. Thank you.
We do have section 149 of the Equality Act 2010, I think, is what Councillor Livingston's referring to, because it creates the public sector equality duty. That does require public authorities to have due regard to eliminating discrimination and advancing equality of opportunity and so forth. However, we don't have a direct link to our planning policy at the moment, and so we are obliged to take into account policy as it is, and rather than as we would like it to be. I think we've told Councillor Livingston before that, you know, at some point this will be brought forward, but as it is at the moment, we have a set of parameters within which we have to operate, and it's just not open to us to fly kites in this way.
Thank you.
Well, then we are knowingly not adhering to the Act of Parliament, in my opinion.
Well, that's your opinion, Councillor, it's not mine.
Okay, let's. Any further comments? Councillor Black. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, can I
Yes,
just have we moved on to the? Okay. I just have a quick question on surface water drainage, please. Paragraph 6.64 is clear, and pre-commencement condition 11 references winter groundwater monitoring. Will that also take future increased rainfall into account? Does it?
Thank you. So the site is on clay soils, and the applicant has demonstrated to the lead local authority that infiltration isn't possible in this instance. So what the basin is doing is holding water to be discharged into the outlet to the south. So the requirement for winter infiltration is conditioned. That was conditioned, I believe, because they need to be sure whether it would need construction-wise to be a lined or unlined system. if there is infiltration, without this, you'd need to line it. That's my understanding. Regarding, because it came up before, an objection from Lead Local Flood Authority, that is based on the current guidance for the current SUDS guidance and the level to which this scheme accords with that, as set out in that paragraph. Officers have noted that it doesn't accord with the latest guidance. That is due to the use of the crates underground. Current guidance moves more towards holding water at surface level. That's not to say that this doesn't achieve suitable drainage, and it does use SUDS simply to the previous guidance. Also worth noting that no surface water will be going into sewers. It would all be to the existing watercourse to the south. Does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I do understand all that. I suppose what I'm trying to get at is whether future increased rainfall will also, I mean, it may not be relevant for this location, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to check, really.
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. Yes, so Lead Local Flood Authority take into account climate modelling to 2070 for surface water drain.
Any further comments, please? No? Okay, then we'll go to the vote. And the vote is, the recommendation is to approve full planning permission subject to appropriate conditions and subject to the completion of necessary Section 106 agreement within 4 months of the decision of this committee, or such longer period as agreed by the Director of Place acting reasonably and properly. All those in favour, please show.
Nine in favour.
All those against?
3 against.
Four.
Four, sorry.
Any abstentions?
No abstentions.
Therefore, the recommendation has been approved. Thank you very much. Would the members like a break? Okay, we will reconvene at 7:30. If you're not in the room, you will be excluded from the further debate if we've started. Councillor Vickers, you wish to make
Chairman, I need to declare an interest in the next application as I'm a member of South Water Parish Council. It's not a prejudicial interest and I'm not part of their planning committee. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to DC 25 1658 Woodford's Shipley Road, Southwater, Horsham. Please could the officer make the application, present the application to committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to a site which adjoins the southern edge of Southwater, but which lies within the parish of Shipley. An existing rural property, Woodford's farmhouse, lies within the centre of the site. From the aerial context here, you can see the site adjoins the built-up edge of Southwater along its northern side, which also includes a TPO belt. There are 4 residential properties set to the west, and to the south is the Brethren's Meeting Hall and its car park. To the northwest is a development site called Rascals Farm, which has secured reserve matters consent for 96 dwellings. Outline approval was formally granted in July 2024 for up to 73 dwellings on the site. The outline consent secured detailed vehicular access off Shipley Road and a new pedestrian access point to the northwest corner of the site. Wider highways works have been secured under the outline consent, including the extended footway alongside Shipley Road into the development site, and financial contributions to move the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit to the south of the site access. The affordable housing mix has also been secured under the legal agreement. Other matters such as ecology, drainage, air quality mitigation measures have been secured under the outlined planning conditions, where a number of these have been discharged or are currently pending consideration. The outline consent secured only the parameter plan and access, along with the principle of development for up to 73 dwellings. The consented outline parameter plan results in 2 development parcels, the retention of Woodford's farmhouse, a central east-west open space which took account of a mature tree, and wide perimeter boundaries which envisaged public open space and the retention of existing trees and vegetation. The site layout presented as part of the reserve matters application before members tonight is in accordance with the approved outline parameter plan and locates all new development within the development parcels, creating a north and south parcel. SUDS features are located along the eastern side where land levels are lower. The central open space and retained perimeter boundaries would include new trees and planting. The layout looks to avoid residential parcels abutting the perimeter boundaries and instead locates paths and driveways at the outer edges with a view of securing the long-term retention of trees, as highlighted in the blue. The landscape proposals reinforce existing boundaries with new tree planting and draw in structural tree planting into the site with street trees and new hedgerows. The 2 parcels will exhibit different characteristics by way of the materials used, with a northern parcel featuring a mix of 2 roof tiles, slate and a red-brown, with multi-red brick elevations and white weatherboarding, which reflect the Southwater neighbourhood to the north. The southern parcel would be predominantly a red brick with dark stained weatherboarding and a rustic red-orangey roof tile, which ties in with a more rural vernacular of the Shipley parish. The lower section there is the southern parcel, and the 2 northern slices represent that are taken from the north parcel. The application was amended to review the design and location of the proposed 3-storey flatted block, following officer concerns which were raised in relation to its originally proposed location in the southwestern corner of the site and its height and roofline. The southwestern corner of the site is considered to be a sensitive interface between the site and the rural area beyond. The revised layout and design has now moved the flatted block further off the southern corner of the site and has reduced the height of the roofline so that it is comparable to the wider scale of development proposed across the site. Although three-storey in nature, the third floor is contained within the roof slope. Additionally, elevations are to be predominantly clad in dark stained weatherboarding with a narrower elevation facing onto Shipley Road, further reducing the visual massing of the flatted block. Officers note the concerns expressed at the location and height of the flatted block and find that the revised design, coupled with the overall distance of separation from the dwellings to the west being in excess of 75 metres, to be acceptable in the edge of village location and to the ongoing privacy and amenities of the nearby occupants, and in keeping with the local design guidance. Officers have assessed the reserved matters application against principles approved at outline stage, the Shipley Neighbourhood Plan and Parish Design Statement, and find that landscape principles and design matters would respect the site's location, neighbouring properties and local planning policies. As set out in the report, the Council's specialists find that detailed matters of trees, drainage and parking would be in accordance with relevant policies, standards, requirements and good practice measures. Accordingly, approval is recommended subject to the conditions shown. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to invite the first public speaker, and that's Tarn Ockenden, please. And you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm a resident of Shipley Road. I live opposite Woodford. This site, at this late stage of the planning process, sadly, I'm probably going to be talking about possible conditions. The original planning approval was given for the new homes that vary in the density from north to south, responding to a transition from the current northern settlement edge to a softer, more rural edge to the south. The homes should therefore reflect their wider context, similar scale and mass and height. Sounds good on paper, so local residents, myself included, never doubted the integrity of that statement. We did not object to the original planning for houses. Local residents only found out about the development plans in November 2025. The developer's plan to include a 3-storey massive apartment block on the southern boundary. This revised block of a 3-level, up to 40 metres expanse, housing around 57 people in one block, with external large obtrusive balconies overlooking existing residential properties and residential amenities. Developers are dictating the planning narrative. We remind the developer this is not a busy town location, but the outskirts of a village, a 20-minute walk to the village centre, and is a greenbelt area within the parish Shipley Council parish. It is important to prevent major building firms from making fundamental changes to the original planning permissions of the design, layout, height and scale. Large apartment blocks with balconies in this location, for instance, the apartment is dominant, intrusive and will change the rural landscape approach to the village forever. Therefore, potential conditions for the planning officer to consider, restrictions of use related to the balconies, hanging items over the balconies, use of the balconies, restricting what can be on the balconies for fire safety related, noise restriction, time restrictions, or a preferred condition would be maybe a condition of change for non-access balcony Juliet style to mitigate issues such as privacy, noise, appearance related issues associated with open balconies. There are many sufficient green areas nearby outside for residents to enjoy within the proposed layout. For the developer to add screening of several large mature trees, hedges, screen the large apartment blocks from existing residents on Shipley Road and the southern boundary. A restriction on the type of street lighting to be used, sympathetic to the rural location to reduce light pollution issues. I wake up every morning, I'll open my curtains and I will see straight down my driveway, so that's why I'm here tonight. If they'd stuck to their original aspects that they'd said, then I guess I wouldn't be sitting here tonight. On behalf of Shipley Road residents, I thank you for your time this evening. There's a few people that can't be here tonight, some of them are not very well. And we urge the Planning Committee to defer, which you can't do, but we ask the officers to compile a much needed list of conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I invite Tim Howe to speak, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Still on. Yeah. Good evening, Chairman and Planning Committee. I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Davis, who reside at Trelfers, which is situated opposite the new revised location of the block of 14 apartments. This new location sites the three-level structure just 22 metres off the western edge of Shipley Road. This is the boundary of the main garden for this property. Both Trelfers and Bertie's Cottage have their main gardens located at the front of their properties. Due to the eastern aspect and the orientation of the sun, the lower areas of these gardens have primary seating. These areas enjoy the sun throughout the day and into the evening. And in fact, there is a permanent seating area called Owl's Corner. This space takes its name from the frequent fly-past of a barn owl. The officers note at 6.33, the committee report, there has been a large number of objections regarding the massing concerns of privacy and overlooking. But there is no mention of the 6 2-metre wide outside balconies and living room windows, plus the 9 bedroom windows. These are now only 27 metres away from this primary seating area. The third level balconies will dominate and severely overlook these private amenity spaces. While generally the 21 metres rule is applied to windows as a standard guideline of distances between habitable rooms for high level balconies, a distance of 35 metres is considered more suitable to prevent direct overlooking into private areas of amenity. The concerns are that these balconies will overlook gardens and will lead to significant problems concerning privacy, amenity and safety. They are more intrusive than windows because they encourage prolonged active use, sitting, eating, talking, playing music in elevated positions, directly infringing on the private space of others, and in this case of an existing property. The boundary of the southern and western edge of the site has limited existing mature screening in place. No amount of heavy standard trees will screen this severe overlooking. Heavy standard trees are around 3.5 metres. The third level balconies are at 9 metres. This will not mitigate the visual impact of proposed development on the southern parcel of the site. It would take at least 10 years for these trees to mature and sufficiently screen this mass of a building. Sadly, current residents of over 45 years are not likely to see the return of their existing privacy. We urge you to defer the decision or set some conditions to address all these concerns. Remove the open balconies and replace with Juliet balconies, less intrusive and more suitable for this rural location. If you really still want open balconies, then please put a covenant to prevent hanging washing out on the balconies and no loud music. Set a condition to crane in several mature trees to screen the southern and western boundaries. Small standard trees are not adequate and will
Do you
not
bring your comments to a
screen
closure,
this awful
please?
building. Yeah, if this decision is already agreed behind closed doors, then please at least demand these conditions to mitigate the loss of our private and quiet amenity space to the long-term existing residents. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite Lisa Lowe, please, and you have 3 minutes as well. Thank you.
Good evening. I strongly object to this application on material planning grounds widely shared by the local community, parish council and professional landscape reports. The proposed design departs from principles established at outline stage and fails to respect the rural edge of settlement character of the site. The principal issue is the layout, density and appearance of the southern part of the development, particularly the siting, scale and massing of the proposed 3-storey apartment block on the rural boundary where the transition to countryside should be most sensitive. Outline permission was granted on the principle of a gradual transition from the village edge in the north to a lower density character in the south. Members were assured the development would provide a tangible softening towards the countryside with a sensitive design reflecting traditional rural forms. The current proposal reverses this approach. Housing density is now higher in the southern parcel than in the northern section, almost doubling versus the outline plan. The proposed scale of the apartment block at 37 metres wide and 10 metres high is unprecedented in an edge of village setting and would be visually imposing even in a town centre. Surrounded by open fields and single-storey farm-style buildings, it would be totally disproportionate and incongruous with the local character, contrary to Policy 40 of the Horsham District Planning Framework. The applicant cites other three-storey buildings in Southwater as precedent, but these are significantly smaller in scale and located within the established built-up area. By contrast, this building is around 4 times larger than any single elevation of the approved Rascals Farm apartment blocks, yet positioned on a much more sensitive rural edge. Both the landscape and visual assessment and place services report note that taller and denser buildings should be located closer to the settlement edge. Instead, the proposal intensifies built form where a sensitive rural transition is required, creating an urbanised and visually intrusive form. The site is open and largely unscreened from Shipley Road when approaching from the south. The full scale of the building will therefore be clearly visible across the landscape and dominate what is currently an open, rural approach to the village. The height and density of this building would also increase light spill, risking harm to sensitive wildlife such as roosting owls and undermining ecological integrity. Outline permission established that homes could be built on this site, but it did not approve this scale, density or building location. If allowed in its current form, it will permanently define the countryside edge of Southwater in the most urban and visually intrusive way. We therefore urge councillors to withhold approval and require a more sensitive revised design, including a reduction in scale and repositioning of the apartment block to restore the lower density transition for the southern parcel. At the very least, it will be critical to secure a strong condition requiring robust landscaping along the southwest and southern boundary with planting
You bring your comments to close, please.
With planting of sufficient height, density and species mix to help mitigate this visual impact at this sensitive rural edge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would now ask Olivia Armitage-Hobbs to speak, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. My name is Olivia Armitage-Hobbs, Planning Manager for
Excuse me,
Bellway.
sorry, if you could speak a little closer to the microphone. Thank you.
I am pleased that our application for 73 new homes, open space and child play provision at Woodford, Shipley Road, Southwater is before you tonight. I would like to thank officers for their work and we welcome the recommendation for approval. The site already has outline planning permission for 73 homes, and throughout the consultation period we have worked proactively with Horsham District Council and engaged with Southwater Parish Council to refine the plans to reflect the community needs. Importantly, there are no objections from statutory consultees. This scheme will deliver a highly sustainable development focused on community wellbeing. It includes high-quality homes, including 29 affordable units, air-sourced heat pumps for all homes to cut carbon emissions and energy costs, ecological enhancements, including hedgehog highways and bat and swift boxes, EV charging points and secure cycle parking for all residents, public open space, including children's play equipment. While the outline illustrative master plan served as an initial guide, detailed design work identified technical constraints that required repositioning the apartment block to protect tree roots along the northern boundary and to accommodate required suds basins. The block was moved to the south. This technical adjustment ensures the long-term health of the site's green infrastructure. We also took local feedback seriously regarding the rural edge. By swapping the location of the apartment block with a smaller terrace of houses, we have softened the southern boundary. We redesigned the block into a 2.5-storey farmstead-style building with the third floor within the roof space. Its 10-metre ridge height now aligns with surrounding 2.5-storey homes, and the use of black timber cladding and red clay tiles reflects the traditional Sussex vernacular. Importantly, we have maintained 40% affordable housing in line with policy and a broad mix of homes to meet local needs. High-quality green infrastructure and additional planting will preserve the site's semi-rural character while retaining existing mature trees and enhancing the natural landscape. Architecturally, we have drawn on the character of Southwater and Shipley, using a design language that complements traditional forms while delivering modern, energy-efficient homes. In summary, this application delivers much-needed housing, including affordable homes, on a site that already has outline permission. These 73 homes will make an important contribution to the district's 5-year housing requirement of over 8,000 units. Bellway is ready to begin work on site immediately once consent is granted. We expect to deliver the first 15 to 20 homes, including affordable units,
Could you bring your comments to a conclusion,
by
please?
summer 27, and we have had discussions with an affordable housing provider to ensure early delivery. We hope members recognise the benefits of the scheme. We hope you will support the officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now invite Julia Crowhurst, Southwater Parish Council, and you have 5 minutes.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of Southwater Parish Council regarding the reserved matter application DC 251658 at Woodford's Shipley Road. While outline consent has already been granted for development on this site, the Parish Council believes that the details now proposed for layout, scale and height fail to respect the rural edge setting of this location and do not reflect the design principles originally presented. Our concerns relate particularly to height, scale and the urbanising impact of the proposed apartment building and townhouses. Before addressing those issues, I would also like to make clear that the Parish Council has received numerous emails from residents regarding this proposal, and we feel it is important that their views are reflected here today. Many residents live closest to the site did not object to this application because the design was described as responding to its rural setting with density varying from north to south to create a transition from the existing settlement edge to a softer countryside edge. Homes were therefore expected to reflect this wider context in terms of scale, mass and height. Residents now feel that the revised scheme has moved away from these original principles. The most significant concern is the scale of the proposed apartment block and townhouses. Although the apartment building has been reduced from 3 stories to 2.5 stories, the reality is that it still presents as a 3-level structure containing 14 flats. This remains dominant and imposing to this rural edge location. In addition, the scheme includes 6 townhouses that are also 2.5 stories high, meaning that a number of the tallest buildings within the development are concentrated within the site. When travelling along Shipley Road, it is easy to see that the surrounding character is made up largely of single-storey homes, 1.5-storey cottages, bungalows and some modest 2-storey houses. A larger apartment block on this height and mass, particularly with balconies, will appear visually intrusive and out of keeping with the established character on this approach to Southwater. Residents have described the building as dominant and overbearing, particularly in its revised southern location, and fear it will permanently change the rural landscape approach to Southwater. The Parish Council supports their concerns. Take together the apartment building and the 2.5-storey townhouses introduced to a scale of development more typical of an urban housing scheme than a rural Sussex village edge. Residents have also highlighted that 3-level buildings were not part of the original design approach presented when outline permission was granted. The earlier concept distributed 2-storey apartments across the site, reflecting the rural setting and avoiding large concentrations of massing. Several residents have also warned that the allowing of 3-level buildings in this location could set an unfortunate precedent, gradually introducing more urban forms of development on the edge of the village. The Parish Council believes that the scheme conflicts with the objectives of the Horsham District Planning Framework, particularly Policy 32 of the Quality of New Development and Policy 33 of Development Principles. Those policies require developments to respect the character and appearance of the surrounding area, respond to its landscape context, deliver high-quality design that integrates with its setting. The scale and massing of the apartment building and townhouses do not provide the sensitive transition between village and countryside that these policies require. In summary, Southwater Parish Council believes that the scheme, as proposed, fails to reflect the rural character of this location and represents a significant departure from the design principles originally presented. Members, this decision is not about whether houses should be built on this site. That principle has already been accepted. The question before you today is whether the design now proposed is appropriate for this location. The Parish Council believes the answer is no. We therefore respectfully ask the committee to refuse this application or require amendments that bring the design back in line with the rural character, landscape setting and original design intended for this site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd now like to invite Councillor Alex Jeffrey, the ward councillor, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. While the principle of development has been accepted, this is the point at which we must ensure that the scheme delivers a high-quality, policy-compliant form of development. It is in my view that this proposal falls short of that requirement on multiple fronts. A key concern is the way in which the scale and density has been distributed across the site. The outline consent was clearly based on a landscape-led approach, with the transition from denser, more settlement-like form in the north to a softer, lower-density edge towards the countryside in the south and east. What we now have is a scheme that departs from that principle. The southern parcel, which is the most sensitive in landscape terms, has been intensified through the introduction of a flatted block and concentration of built form that does not reflect that intended transition. This has direct consequences for both character and visual impact. The height and massing of the proposed buildings, particularly the 2.5 to 3 storey elements, are not characteristic of the local area. The parish design guidance is quite clear that development in this locality should be predominantly 2 storeys. While some of these units are described as being within the roof, the reality is that their ridge heights approach around 10 metres, which materially increases their perceived scale. In planning terms, it is the perception of bulk and prominence that is important, and in this case, it results in a form of development that appears out of keeping with its context. This is particularly evident when considering the site in its wider setting. The development will be clearly visible from Shipley Road, which currently presents a soft landscaped edge to the settlement. The introduction of a prominent block of flats in this location, with limited established screening, will inevitably urbanise that edge and create a visual intrusion in views approaching Southwater. The reliance on new planting to mitigate the impacts carries limited weight, particularly given the time it will take for that landscaping to mature. In the meantime, the built form will dominate. There are also concerns in relation to residential amenity. The scale and positioning of the taller elements, particularly the apartment block, introduce overlooking towards properties on Shipley Road. This is an unusual relationship in that those properties have their primary amenity space to the front, which increases their sensitivity to this form of development. Even where separation distances may technically be achieved, the combination of height and orientation can still result in a harmful perception of being overlooked. In terms of landscaping, while there are positive elements such as the retention of boundary vegetation, the overall impression is that the landscape strategy is not leading the design but instead responding to it. The scale and sitting of buildings, particularly at the site edges, are not sufficiently mitigated by the proposed planting, and the development does not achieve the kind of integrated countryside edge character that was envisaged at outline stage. A further concern is light pollution. The scale and intensity of development, particularly the taller buildings, will increase light spill in which currently an unlit semi-rural location. This will erode the rural character, impact neighbouring amenity and has potential ecological implications given the site's sensitivity. Even with conditions, the overall level of urbanising light will be materially higher, which conflicts with Policy 33, requiring development to respect local character and amenity. Taking all of these points together, the proposal does not, in my view, represent a faithful or policy-compliant delivery of approved parameters. It results in a form of development that is overly assertive in scale, insufficiently responsive to its landscape context, and harmful to both visual amenity and neighbouring residential amenity. For those reasons, I would urge members to refuse the application and encourage the developer to come back with a revised proposal that is suitable for the locality. However, if members are minded to approve the application, I would strongly urge that robust and specific conditions imposed to secure enhanced boundary landscaping. In particular, this should require a substantial volume of structural planting along the southwestern and southern edges of the site, comprising of a diverse mix of native and semi-mature species of sufficient initial height and density to provide meaningful screening from the outset. Such a condition should also secure details of species selection, planting sizes, spacing and long-term management in order to ensure that the development is adequately assimilated into the surrounding landscape and that the visual impacts identified are properly mitigated in accordance with Policy 33 of the Horsham District Planning Framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Up to the members, do you have any points you'd like to have clarity on that were raised during the, yes, Councillor Blackburn, yes.
Just regarding points raised by people, what kind of scope is there for changing balconies to Juliet balconies? And then I'd like to, shall I continue on with my questions now? One by one, yeah. I'm also interested in the slope that's on the site. Residents are concerned about the apartment block being so far south, and I understand it has been moved back, but HDC's landscape architect also said that he or she would have preferred it to be moved even further north. But I do take on board what the developer's representative has just said about tree roots and sub basins. But I'm just wondering if we can just clarify what the slope is also, because whether that is you know, kind of whether it is pronounced enough to make a difference to sightlines and so on. Yeah, if we can just start with that, please.
Thank you. Just before we answer the question about balconies, I thought it'd be useful to cover the point about density. So this was the parameter plan secured as part of the outline consent. Now I recognise that there was a vision expressed within the outline consent, but in terms of what we approved as part of the outline consent, this is the parameter plan. So this parameter plan didn't state a density at you know, in particular areas of the site. And to be honest, with a site this small, I know it's a major, but you know, we generally have different densities when you have much larger sites. So generally speaking, we wouldn't have different densities for in principle in terms of what we secure as part of the planning application. So this is what was secured, and officers are of the view that this development complies with this parameter plan. Now that is different to whether the development is acceptable or not, and I'll come onto that. So it's not in conflict with the approval at outline stage, but clearly members can now consider the layout, the scale, and whether that's appropriate to its context. And obviously part of that is the flatted block. In terms of your question around balconies, I think the key question really is it appropriate in its setting? Obviously, if you're removing balconies, you're removing outside amenity space for those occupiers. And also my understanding from my colleague is that some affordable units is actually a requirement that they have balconies. So I think it's not just a case of removing balconies. In any event, I think officers of the view, given the distances, there isn't an issue of overlooking. I know there will be a perception from those neighbours, they may feel overlooked, but in terms of the distances, officers feel that there isn't direct overlooking. Clearly people will see it. Again, unfortunately, seeing something is not a reason for refusal. It has to have an overbearing impact. But clearly the character and appearance in the context of where it sits is relevant, and obviously members would have heard those concerns. Can I just ask my colleague to comment on the land level differences?
There is a level strategy submitted. I don't have access to it right now. I think from memory, the land slopes from the north to the south boundaries by about 10 metres and from the east to the west by about 5. slightly a lesser slope at the bottom section. I think it's about 3 metres from the east to the west side. It sounds dramatic on plan when you read the figures, but actually when you see it on site, it doesn't read as being that drastic. And the level strategies do show a gradual rise up the slope from the north corner, from the south corner up to the north side of the site. So the dwellings and the built development would follow the general ground levels there to kind of create that sloped and that kind of modified appearance. As you can see on the elevations here, it reflects the sloping site. So the one at the bottom is in the south part, and you can see the red line where that section is taken from.
Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to the officers for that presentation. Clearly, the principle of development here, as we know, is established. So what we have to decide this evening is whether the character and appearance of this development is acceptable. I was surprised to hear that affordable housing has to have balconies, outside space, because I know in Lintott Square in Southwater there are several flats there which have Juliet balconies, which are affordable housing. So I'm very surprised that isn't a possibility in this particular case. I do think the impact of those 2.5/3-story buildings is a step too far. It's out of character with the area. I have concerns about that. If we could condition to have Juliet balconies, I would feel more comfortable. And also I'd want to know there was a robust landscaping condition, especially on the southern part of that site. So could the officers just clarify those points for me, please?
I'm not sure if we can remove the balconies owing to I think that would need agreement.
I think, Councillor Vickers, in terms of the balconies, I don't think we can condition its removal. I think if members felt that was fundamental to the acceptability of the scheme, that's something we could discuss with the developer under deferral. Clearly not all the flatted block will be affordable, so perhaps that would be possible. I think it's the particular affordable housing provider that requires it. But in any event, you have to be mindful that is removing some outside space for the occupiers of those flats. So I think, but that's something that, could be discussed if members felt that was essential. But I don't think it's something we could just condition, because it simply might not be feasible.
Landscaping condition possible?
I think there are landscaping conditions on the site. Obviously, members need to understand the purpose of landscaping is not just to screen things. Development should be acceptable in its own right. Landscaping, mitigates it and softens the appearance. But there are obviously landscaping conditions. Did you want to comment on that further?
Yes, thank you. The condition at the moment would be to secure the landscape scheme as submitted with this application, which shows a number of heavy standard trees on the detailed landscape plans. So as you can see, the sort of the brighter green circular blobs are the new trees, and they're to be heavy standard or extra heavy standard trees to go in. But as drafted at the moment, it's in compliance with the details submitted.
Okay, thank you. I'll come to you shortly, Councillor. The officers will address the points raised by the public, then I will come back to the members.
I think, I believe a lot of things have been covered. For example, the density and the deviation from the density. The balconies, we couldn't restrict the use of the balconies. I think in terms of overlooking and amenity, we've addressed that, and the diagram up on the screen at the moment shows you those overall distances. there is an acknowledgement that some of these properties have front amenity areas in their gardens, but I think overall the distances are still significant, and that any overlooking wouldn't be adversely harmful. And I think that's the test with overlooking and loss of privacy. We've sought to revise the design of the flatted block, so the layout as it is now on screen, it would be modified by having that little terrace in the southern corner. So it's not hard up against that southwest corner of the site, so it has got that sense of stepping up. I think the block and the prominence in terms of the flatted block, the lower slice there, you can see the flatted block in relation to other dwellings across the site. And that's a reasonably accurate representation of their heights in comparison to the flatted block, which is 10 metres in height, and then the adjacent development sort of steps from 9 metres, 9.5 up to 10 metres. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderbilt.
Thank you, Chairman. I think if they hadn't put in their proposal that they were sympathetic towards, the village edge, it wouldn't be so annoying. But it is very annoying, actually, that they've done this. And I don't like it. I feel like we've been duped a bit. And if we can't trust developers to come forward with, I know it is a bit of a chuckle, but we just need to be able to, rely on statements. And I don't think that that's the case in this instance. So I am minded to refuse this.
Thank you.
I think if I can recall from this site, it wasn't the current applicant that submitted the outline consent. Obviously, what often happens is you have a land agent or whatever, they'll bring forward an application and then it's perhaps sold on to a developer. I don't know the particular circumstances here, but I think we just need to be mindful of the general process of bringing forward development. And I think what we need to be mindful of is what plans were approved as part of the outline consent, and therefore what it needs to comply with. So this development complies with the parameter plans and the scope of the outline consent. So that it does what it needs to do in that respect. Clearly, when you have a reserved matters, there's other things to consider other than what you considered at outline stage, such as the general layout, such as the appearance, such as the scale, the design, etc. They are all matters that are different to what you considered at outline consent, and that's what members have to consider is whether this is acceptable or not. I think we have to be mindful it does comply with the outline, but there are still additional matters that you can consider at this reserved matters stage, and obviously they're just as important. Thank you.
Councillor Livingstone.
Well, the issue is this 3-storey apartment block down at the south part of the site. Now, it's not been built. All it is shown on a drawing, a CAD drawing, which is simply move your cursor and move the block up to the north and then put the smaller houses down to the south. It's a simple adjustment by the developer. They could make it, and they can make it more acceptable to the community. So why isn't that being done? Now, I think we should defer this until the applicant comes back with a more acceptable design to the community.
Councillor Clark, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question, and I've got several questions. The first question is, what does extra heavy and whatever it is trees mean? But maybe you can address that afterwards, please. If I look at 6.58, 6.59, 6.6, page 131, specifically Southern Waters say, my favourite hobby horse, sewage, they can't cope. We shouldn't allow anything to be built until such a time as Southern Water can get their act together. It says in here that reflects comments made in 2020 at outline stage, and basically that has to be met. So the question I have is, I've gone through 20/2564, I've gone through 24/1974, and I've gone through 21/2180, and I can't find any reference at all to it. So my question is, to do with the sewage treatment, first of all, is this covered somewhere? Because I can't find it. And will this be implemented before any construction takes place? So that's the first question. And my second comment is, on grounds of design, I have severe reservations as well. It's not a trick question, but it's genuine that I can't actually find the offsetting of the sewage, which you know is one of my hobby horses with CSOs.
Just to say, Councillor Clark, we'll need to check what was on the outline consent. That was an appeal, wasn't it?
I've done it quickly, but probably not accurately enough.
Okay, so we'll just have to look back and see whether any conditions were applied. So you'll have to bear with us.
But you can tell me about extra heavy trees in the meantime.
I couldn't see who was first, but I'll go with Councillor Raby. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Chair. My comment on questions around the 3.5 HDC housing objection to do with the mix of affordable, particularly to do with the fact that there's a requirement in our district, the local demand is for larger family units for the 3 and 4 beds. So I think it's just a shame that that wasn't more met, particularly given that apartments seem to be the thing that's caused upset to the local community. Maybe fewer affordable 3 and 4 might have been a nicer solution. So I just wanted to raise that.
Councillor Trollope.
Hello. Yes, I just wanted to make the point. Well, I didn't know what a Juliet balcony meant until today. I did do a quick Google on it, and it doesn't really. I don't think it would do anything to address any overlooking concerns. I mean, it's still like this wide open window that you have that you can open a door, but you can't walk out to anything. So I think if we're going to have the building, I would allow the residents to have a balcony that can actually go outside and get some fresh air. And I don't think it would make any difference at all to the overlooking aspect of it. But what I wanted to ask as a question is, yeah, I'm sympathetic to this idea that it might be overlooking, but I'm kind of finding it difficult to imagine in my head how it exactly looks and how it would look for the people at the bottom and also the people at the top. Do we have like a drawing or a schematic or a model or something that can kind of give a good sense of what it will actually look like? Because I think a lot of it, I mean, from the officer's remarks previously, is that a lot of it is perception rather than reality. And I would like to get a good sense of, of it myself, if possible. Otherwise, I'd probably err on the side of caution. Probably, I don't know. I mean, at the moment, I'm still not convinced that we would need to not support this application. But I don't know. I'd just still like to get a better sense of what the actual overlooking impact is, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just coming back to Councillor Clark's question first. Southern Water didn't actually object to the scheme. I think they said there'll be a minor adverse impact, but no, we can't. There was no condition in related to foul drainage that we can find on the outline consent.
But it's in the report.
In which report? This current report?
Yeah, it refers to it.
What page is that on?
Page 131, paragraph 6.59, 5th line down. Unless I've misread it, but I don't think I have.
No distance. So Councillor Clark, I do apologise for this. So it does appear in terms of that element of the report is actually a typo, because there isn't, as you spotted, there isn't a condition 12, and we're just going to read out the comments that we got from Southern Water as part of the outline scheme.
So they said, in relation to foul drainage, they've undertaken a capacity check of the impact of the additional foul sewage flows from the proposed development on the existing public sewer network. This study indicates that these additional flows may lead to a minor increased risk of impact on the sewer network, but they didn't object to it and they didn't ask for a phased development to come forward.
So apologies for the confusion there. In terms of Councillor Raby's question around mix, the mix was secured as part of the outline scheme for both market and affordable. Recognise the comments from our affordable housing officers. Obviously, we have to be mindful of the passage of time, because obviously that, and also we need to be mindful of, actually we've got 40% on this site. So, but they were secured at outline stage, and what they're proposing now complies with that. Thank you. And in terms of Councillor Trollope's question, I don't, you know, have you got the one with the distances? You know, this obviously, you know, when you have an application, applicants are not required to provide plans from outside of the site, but obviously the case officer has put forward this plan which measures the distances. So do have a closer look at this slide if that's helpful. So this does measure the distances from the flatted block to the nearest residential properties.
Councillor Croker. Thank you, Chair. So I'd like to look at a slightly different aspect of this sorry, can't say things. The housing density in the southern part of the site, and it was driven by looking at one of the development documents that shows the parking spaces, and guess where most of the parking spaces are? At the bottom of the site. Then you think, well, how do the vehicles get there? Obviously they have to drive through the site. And to me that doesn't sound terribly clever planning, or indeed quality development, pushing more vehicles through the site than you might need to if you put the housing density nearer to the north of the site where the access is to the site. So as some other members have commented, I might support a deferral of this, to give the developer another chance of getting it right. Thank you.
Councillor Livingston, you were considering deferring this. Do you still wish to pursue that?
I do think it would be wise for us to put a motion to defer this application.
Chairman, a point of order. I thought it was somebody proposed refusal before that.
It implied that I might.
He didn't put forward a motion. He said he would be minded to refuse.
Well, I don't think Dennis put forward a motion.
Councillor Livingston did suggest a deferral. I'll come back to him. But if you wish, okay. If you wish to put forward an alternative motion, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Clearly, members have expressed concern in terms of the flatted block. Well, I hear you. So, you know, there's obviously three options here. You proceed with the recommendation as is, or there's an alternative motion. One could be for deferral and one could be for refusal. Obviously, this is a scheme with outline consent, so it's got permission. So we're looking at the detailed matters here. I don't know whether developers would be open to deferral and looking at relocating that flatted block, but you know, rather than immediately proceed to a refusal, I think it may be beneficial to defer it for a shortish period of time to have that conversation. Obviously, we would bring it back to committee, and if it's not changed or if the changes are not sufficient, then members can make a decision at that point. Clearly, it's your decision, members, but obviously it is a development that's got permission. We do want to see development come forward on the site, so that may be a more appropriate option rather than a potential appeal. Thank you.
Councillor Vickers.
I'm happy to second that proposal to defer it.
We're deferring it, that's the only thing. So, Councillor Livingston, do you want to put some weasel words together as to why we defer it?
We want to defer it till design matters which have been raised at committee are resolved with regard to the apartment block located at the south of the site. With regard to design and massing. Yeah.
And massing and location.
And location, yeah. Hey, don't go too far.
Let's let them go and have a good think about it.
Chair, did Councillor Clark get an answer to his tree question? I have an answer. An extra heavy standard tree has a girth of 14 to 16 centimetres and a height of 350 to 400 centimetres. It goes right from whips right up to advanced heavy standard, semi-mature and so forth. There's a complete scale of them. So they're quite impactful.
Thank you, Chairman. I just clearly in a deferral, we need to provide some clear guidance for us as officers and for the developer in terms of what members are seeking. So based on what Councillor Livingston said, you're seeking a reconsideration of the design, the location and the massing of the flatted block. But then at that point, there was lots of other comments. So I'm not quite clear, one, whether they're reasonable and necessary, and two, exactly what they are. So from the discussion, the flatted block has clearly been a focal point of the conversation. So that's fine. Was there anything else, Councillor Livingston, you wish to be included in the deferral?
Can we ask Councillor Vickers to comment as well?
Chairman, I'd like them to go away and think about those balconies, please. The design thereof. They could have Juliet balconies which open but don't actually have access out. So you can't hang your washing out there. Thank you.
Additionally, the considerations the Vice Chairman raised as well.
So that was the access at the north and the majority of traffic or parking spaces in the south, meaning that everybody who lives down the south end, the majority of traffic is going to come in at the northern end and have to drive through the site. And that was a good reason for having the density greater at the northern end, because that's where the access is. So it's just a reconsideration of that, perhaps. And
can I just comment on that first? I think that as a standalone issue is not going to be substantive, but clearly if you're looking at the relocation of the block in any event, that would address that concern. Yeah. So I don't necessarily think we need to detail that, because I think that's kind of a side impact of the key point really. But the developers, I'm sure, have heard that. Thank you.
Councillor Trollope.
I think it's been covered, but I'd just like to make the point that I really would not want the balcony type to be in discussion at any further stage. I think what they propose is fine, and I think to go to a Juliet type whatever is unnecessary and egregious to any future owner.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just on the balconies, I think it's fine to include it. Ultimately, if the flatted block is moved, then that is part of the consideration. That might not be necessary. So I think it does depend on what its location is. So I think it's fine to consider it. We're not asking for a particular outcome because it will depend on the other changes. So just to clarify, Councillor Livingstone, your motion to defer, you're seeking to defer the application in relation to concerns raised regarding the flatted block for its design and location, massing, and a review of the balconies.
Yeah, correct. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder for that? Yep. All those in favour, please show.
In favour.
All those against?
Do you want to recount that? I don't think that.
Okay, sorry. Can we, all those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 12.
12.
Okay.
Those against?
1 against.
Any abstentions?
No abstentions.
Therefore, the application has been deferred. Thank you. Before we move forward, because it's now at 8:30, we have to take a vote on whether we wish to proceed. We have two further. I'll just wait for the public to leave, sorry. Okay, as it's now 8:30, and as if we wish to proceed, we need to take a vote. We have two further applications to consider, but I think they are fairly straightforward. But we still have to have a vote on whether we wish to continue beyond 8:30. So all those in favour of continuing, please show.
Everybody, except Sam. Sam.
No. No, and Roger, no, oh, you've got your hand up, have you now? You've been persuaded, sorry.
It's carried.
13 for it's
One again.
carried.
The power of the sandwich.
Probably the power of the chauffeur hope, isn't it? Okay, moving on to agenda item number 8. DC 251831 Abbottsley, Washington Road, Storrington. Please could the officer present the application to committee?
Good evening, Chair, and thank you, members. This application seeks outline permission with all matters reserved, apart from access, for one 4-bedroom dwelling with associated private garden space, car parking and landscaping. Officers are recommending that outline permission be granted subject to conditions. This application is being heard this evening as the application would represent a departure from the development plan. Further to the committee report, I'd just like to provide a quick verbal update. Further consideration has been given to the ecological advice in respect of great crested newts. The submitted preliminary ecological appraisal dated October 2024 is approximately 17 months old. The site remains garden land with no changes to habitat since the last ecological survey. The information is therefore considered to remain sufficiently up to date. The Council's ecologist has confirmed that the proposed development can proceed without impacting great crested newts, provided the applicant follows the statutory precautionary measures outlined in the informative. As shown in the slide. Apologies, it's come out a bit smaller than I thought. These include careful storage of materials, covering trenches and stopping work immediately if any newts are found, with guidance from a qualified ecologist. So in terms of the site description, the site is shown on the location plan and aerial map. The proposal seeks to subdivide the existing dwelling and its curtilage to accommodate a new dwelling, the location of which is shown in red. The wider site, shown in blue, comprises the host dwelling, associated outbuildings and a large garden area. The site is bounded by established mature trees and hedging and is accessed from Washington Road to the south. Residential properties, including Abbott's Barn and Sandgate Lodge, lie to the east and west, with further sporadic residential development along the road. The site is located approximately 430 metres outside the defined built-up area boundary of Storrington, and therefore within the countryside in policy terms. The outline proposal for a new dwelling and associated works is shown on the site plan here. The plans indicate a detached dwelling set within generous grounds with associated works. Access would be taken from the existing driveway along the southeastern boundary. An appropriate level of private amenity space would be retained for both the proposed and host dwellings. As an outline application, members are considering the principle of development and access only. All other matters, including appearance, layout, landscaping and scale, would be considered at the reserved matters stage. Now for some photos. So the following photos 1 and 2 show the front and rear elevations of the host dwelling. Photos 3 and 4 show the existing garden space. So photo 3 looks northeast and indicates the location of the proposed dwelling and the garden space. And photo 4 shows the rear garden space to be retained for the host dwelling. So it's quite substantial. And photo 5 shows the driveway. It's an in and out driveway with proposed access point into the application site. So in terms of the matters for consideration, in terms of the main considerations, the first is the principle of development and the planning history. The site lies outside the built-up area boundary and therefore conflicts with the development plan. However, this has been tested at appeal in the previous application, where the inspector found the site to be a sustainable location and concluded that conflict with the spatial strategy was not determinative. I'm just showing the key paragraph from the PIN's decision here, which confirms this. The appeal was dismissed solely on water neutrality grounds, and previous concerns relating to the location and trees were not upheld. Water neutrality has now been addressed, and officers are satisfied that the principle of development is now acceptable. In terms of other matters, there are no objections from the tree officer, subject to protection measures secured by condition. Highways raise no objection in relation to the proposed access, and in respect of ecology, I addressed that outstanding matter regarding great crested newts in the verbal update. And notwithstanding the nature space comments, the ecological information is considered to remain sufficiently up to date. Overall, the proposal is considered acceptable and recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair and members.
Thank you very much. We have one public speaker, that's Rebecca Hode. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Chair and members, and apologies in advance, I have a cold. I'm Rebecca Hode of EC Planning, speaking on behalf of the applicant. This application seeks outline permission with access only to be determined for one 4-bedroom dwelling within the residential curtilage of Abbottsley. Members will recall this is a resubmission following the dismissal of the previous appeal. It is important to be clear, the inspector dismissed that appeal for one reason only: water neutrality. On all other matters, the inspector was supportive. The inspector found the site is not isolated, is accessible to services and public transport, is well contained between existing dwellings and designated land, makes effective use of previously developed land, and would not cause unacceptable countryside or landscape harm. Crucially, she stated that the site's position outside the settlement boundary was not decisive. Since that appeal, the water neutrality position has changed significantly, Natural England has withdrawn its 2021 position statement, and officers have now completed an appropriate assessment confirming no adverse effect on the Arun Valley sites. Water efficiency is secured by condition. So the only issue that led to dismissal of the appeal has been resolved. Turning to your committee report, officers have recommended approval. There are no objections from Highways, Ecology, Environmental Health, the South Downs National Park Authority, or your tree officer. The parish council is neutral. There have been no public objections. Members are therefore left with the principle of development. Yes, the site lies outside the built-up area boundary, but it is contained between existing dwellings, does not extend into open countryside, does not cause settlement coalescence, and is sustainably located with access to services and bus stops. The council can currently only demonstrate around a 1-year housing land supply. Paragraph 11D of the MPPF is engaged. As the inspector previously concluded, this proposal performs well in planning terms, and the conflict with the spatial strategy is not decisive in the current housing context. This is a modest deliverable windfall dwelling in a sustainable location with no technical harm identified and a clear officer recommendation for approval. In those circumstances, there is no reason to refuse. On behalf of the applicant, I respectfully ask members to support your officers and grant outline planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify, page 139 of your committee report, it says to approve planning permission. It should be to agree to approve outline planning permission. Okay, I am minded, because this is just a question of water neutrality, to go straight to the vote. It's been dismissed. The other aspects have been dismissed at, it's the only reason it was dismissed at appeal, and the other aspects were upheld by the inspector. So therefore, all those in favour, please show. It's unanimous.
It's unanimous.
Therefore, the recommendation to approve outline planning permission, subject to appropriate conditions, has been approved. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 9, which is DC 252124. This is Silver Lane, Billingshurst. And could the officer make a presentation to committee? Thank you.
Members, this application seeks permission for the erection of a 2-storey side and rear extension, single-storey rear extension and associated alterations. This application is being heard this evening as the applicant is related to a member of staff at Horsham District Council. This site is shown on the location plan on this side. It's located within the built-up area of Billingshurst on Silver Lane, where the character is residential. Some photos of the site. The site is comprised of a 2-storey detached residential dwelling with attached double garage with conservatory to the rear. Off-street parking is provided to the front of the property on the driveway. Photo 3 shows the side elevation of the host dwelling, and photo 4 shows the side elevation of the neighbouring property to the north, number 35, which is the dwelling that would be most affected by the proposal. This slide shows the existing elevations of the existing dwelling, and these are the proposed elevations with a 2-storey side and rear elevation and further single-storey extension to the rear. These are the floor plans as existing and the roof plan on the right-hand side. And these are the proposed. So the main matters for consideration here relate to the visual impact and the impact on neighbouring amenity. And officers are satisfied that the proposed scheme would be acceptable on these grounds for the reasons set out in the report. Overall, the proposal is considered acceptable and recommended for approval. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. There's no public speakers. And does any member wish to comment on this application? No? Okay, we'll go straight to the vote. And the recommendation is to approve planning permission subject to appropriate conditions. All those in favour, please show. It's unanimous. Unanimous.
13 for,
Any against?
none against. Oh, sorry, John.
Yeah, John doesn't vote.
Unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Therefore, the recommendation to approve planning permission subject to appropriate condition has been approved. Thank you.
Well done, Chairman.
Moving on to item 10, urgent business. I have quite a few things this evening. No urgent business, but finally I'd like to thank the officers for their presentation and guidance this evening, and members for your involvement and contribution, and hope I didn't confuse you early on, and wish you all a safe journey home. And it's at 18:46. No, it isn't. 20:46. I bring the meeting to a planning committee close. I'll start again, shall I? At 20:46, I bring the meeting of the planning committee to a close. Thank you. You threw me there, Councillor Lambert.